Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show one more time this week in the best week of Utah sports every single year. Well, it hasn't been every single year, but now it will be every single year. It is Holy War Week, rivalry game being played at Rice-Eccles Stadium tomorrow night. The last time the BYU Cougars were victorious at Rice-Eccles in this game, all the way back in 2006. It has been a long time, and they are the favorites heading into RES tomorrow night. Going to be a fun show today. Jordan Wynn's going to stop by. Bill Riley's going to stop by. Jerem Jordan for Little Red and Blue. We'll check in on the odds and the odds makers with Lee Sterling, our resident handicapper, for entertainment purposes only. And then Andrea Urban. I'm actually really excited to talk about this rivalry game with Andrea Urban because Andrea is a transplant. Now, she's very dyed-in-the-wool Utah, this sports community across the state now, but didn't grow up in Utah. So probably doesn't have the same, like, all the way down in your bones awareness of what the Holy War is that a lot of you do. So looking forward to speaking with Andrea Urban about this upcoming game. Had a lot of conversations this week, had a lot of conversations actually last night about what we really should expect in this game between Utah and BYU. And I put a poll question out to pass that question on to you to get you to tell me what your expectations are. As always, 877-353-0700 on the Dish Pros text line as well. And the opening segment brought to you by Alvi Armani and alviarmani.com. If you're losing a little bit of that salad, if the hair is thinning out, you're getting embarrassed about it, you don't have to deal with that anymore. Go to alviarmani.com, and they will help you out. Gentlemen, ladies, they handle it for anybody, the hair loss issues. Big ups to Alvi Armani for making the show possible. All right. James Peterson on the ones and twos, pushing the buttons today. He'll be weighing in periodically in a Dr. J jersey today, right?
Yeah, I thought I'd wear red. You know,
okay,
for the Holy War Eve.
It's a bit of a stretch, but I like it.
And I got the interlocking U hat on.
That's actually that's a really great hat.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's like a charcoal gray with the red interlocking U on it. So I'm in the festive mood. I don't have a Utes jersey. I need to get a Utes jersey for occasions like this. But I decided I'll wear a red basketball jersey. How about that?
I didn't expect to be asking this question 3 minutes into the show. But if we're trying to get you in a Utes jersey, and James, by the way, he's a jersey wearing guy.
I'm kind of a jersey aficionado,
which is cool. I like that. What Ute jersey would you wear?
Let's see. I mean,
the
recent era. I'd probably lean towards the recent era because that's the era I know the most about with Utes because I did not grow up a Utah fan.
Okay, but hold on. Let me pause for you here.
Maybe a Sean O'Connell jersey.
There's literally one in existence, and it's crumpled up in a corner somewhere.
I'm getting it.
You're kind of a throwback jersey guy, though.
Yeah,
you wear a lot of throwbacks.
It's true.
If you could get your hands on like a Luther Ellis, would you wear that?
Luther, maybe a Sharif Shah.
A Sharif Shah jersey would be sick.
Well, Kevin Dyson. Now, Dr. Kevin Dyson would be pretty cool.
What about a Scott Mitchell jersey?
Scott Mitchell. Well, 19. I might just go raid his man cave. He was showing us pictures of that. We had the team dinner the other night, and he was showing us pictures of his studio with all of his memorabilia from his playing days. Yeah. I might just go break the glass frame that he's got the 19 Utah jersey in, and just start wearing that.
He's got some cool stuff. He's got like a USFL helmet. I mean, he's got some really good stuff.
The picture of he and Dan Marino just casual in their Dolphins jerseys out in front of a Miami Pier looking thing. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome. So a Utah jersey for the James Peterson collection, I think I would probably lean throwback because that's usually what you're wearing. But
yeah, Scott Mitchell, Alex Smith, Eric Weddle, Morgan Scalley, one of those would be pretty cool.
I wanted to say, hey, those aren't old enough to be throwbacks, but they are now.
They are now. We're 20
years more
removed. We're 20 years exactly now. Yeah. So Maybe one of those. I might go to your parents' house and steal your jersey.
I told James this story the other day, but the Fiesta Bowl jersey that I've got still is excellent because it doesn't have the correct roster number on the jersey. That year I was number 46 on the roster as a lowly walk-on, and we got to the Fiesta Bowl, and obviously lowly walk-ons back then, certainly, and still in these days, you don't always get to travel, right? And you don't always have you don't always get to dress. So I was number 46 on the roster, and they didn't have a 46 to dress everybody for the Fiesta Bowl. So I was since I was a linebacker, they're like, what numbers can you wear? So I got 57 as my Fiesta Bowl jersey, which is amazing and fantastic. A terrible number, 57, a number that nobody would ever choose. I mean, name for me, if you can, at 877-353-0700, one excellent football player that wore number 57. Name like a really good player who wore number 57. You're not going to be able to do it. You could name a couple of 67s. You could name a couple of 37s, a couple of 27s. You cannot find, certainly plenty of 77s. You're not going to find anyone good who wore number 57 voluntarily. That doesn't matter. Back to this Holy War rivalry game. What is actually going to happen tomorrow night at Rice-Eccles Stadium? The poll question is up. A Utah blowout win, a BYU blowout win, a Utah close win, or a BYU close win? And I say blowout is a 3-score game. Blowout is anything above 17 points. Got to at least be a 3-score game for me to call it a blowout. So what's the most likely in your mind, James Peterson, as we pass that question on to our listeners?
I think sorry, give me the choices again. I heard blowout win.
Utah blowout win.
Okay.
Utah close win. BYU blowout win or BYU close win.
As much as I think it's going to pain the listeners, but I think that Utah fans are pretty self-aware about where this season is and how this is probably the most likely outcome is a BYU win. I'm going to say BYU close win.
Right now, BYU close win is in third place.
Third place. So let me guess, BYU blowout is second?
Yes.
So Utah close win is first.
Utah close win, 51% of the responses so far. BYU blowout win, 21.4%, and then BYU close win just behind at just under 21%. Utah blowout win, only 6.9% of people think that that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's probably the least likely, if we're being honest.
I mean, it is not probably the least likely.
If there was maybe there is Vegas odds on this, but if there was Vegas odds on the type of win it'd be, that's probably a huge underdog.
So the spread in this game has moved a little bit throughout the week. I think we saw it up as high as 5 points. Hovering at 3.5 in favor of BYU. The over-under is set at 40.5 points, which is very interesting because BYU is scoring 35 points a game offensively. Now, this has
so Vegas thinks it's going to be 40-0.
That's what's so funny about this is you look at it and you're just like, well, come on. I mean, 35 points plus. Oh wait,
35-5.
That means. Is Utah going to score a touchdown? If BYU scores their season total and Utah scores a touchdown, now you've hit the over, right?
Or even just 2 field goals, you technically just over.
You're just over. So, look, it's a tough – I was doing some over-unders for the show yesterday, my own over-unders, and I explained kind of how we came about some of those numbers, and I'll go over the results for you
great
again.
OC Sportsbook.
Yes.
The OC Sportsbook.org.
The Sean O'Connell Show Sportsbook. Look, you can find some props. They're not that easy to find for games like this. So the over-unders, I said BYU interceptions, over-under 1.5. They're averaging 1.75 interceptions per game. So I set it slightly under that, which probably isn't even realistic to do. You should keep it at the 1.75 number at least, but because you can't get 3/4 of an interception, you either get one or you get two or you get whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, 57% of people said BYU will get lower than that total. And that was your pick as well. You said get one.
I said one, and I'm sure a lot of the people voting on that were like, no, we're not going to turn the ball over. Utah fans just not going to turn the ball over.
I set the over-under for Utah sacks at half a sack because they've been paltry in the pass rush. At least they've had pressures, but they have not gotten to the quarterback and got him to the ground effectively in this 4-game losing streak. Set it at half a sack. The optimism rings through again. 79% of the respondents think that Utah is going to get to the quarterback at least once in this game. Over-under on BYU versus Utah. The points for BYU, okay? I just told you they're scoring 35 points a game. Utah's giving up roughly 16 points a game. I split the difference, and I said BYU points over under 24.5 points. 51.7% of the respondents think that BYU hits the over on my total, on my numbers, just for BYU at 24.5. And now that's where it's really fascinating for me, James, because the Utah fans, who are the listeners to the show and are the followers of the show primarily, on all the other things, we're biased towards Utah, which is somewhat expected. And this one, the BYU point total, is where I think, against their best wishes, against their better moral feelings, Utah fans came in and said, all right, they probably will score more than 24.5 points. And I deliberately left off the show yesterday how many points you think Utah is going to score. We're gonna get into that today.
Saving the best one for last day, Football Friday.
And because I like to be, as Alonzo has pointed out several times, I like to be kind of manipulative with these poll questions and lead the witnesses first, and that's probably a little bit messed up. But BYU is second in the conference right now in points per game offensively. Utah is 14th in the conference right now in points per game offensively. 22.8 points per game, just under 23 points a game for Utah, and that number is actually skewed a little bit by the Southern Utah game. If you take the Power 5 opponents, if you take the conference opponents for Utah, it's lower than 23 points a game. So now you're trying to do these apples-to-apples comparisons, and I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, how do I set my Utah football scoring total for today? Not what Vegas says, what I think we should talk about on the show based on what BYU has done defensively, based on what Utah has done offensively. How am I looking at it? How am I setting a point total on the show to add to the poll questions? And how am I going to split the difference on where Utah has been and where BYU has been defensively? So Utah scoring 23-ish points a game, and BYU is giving up 20-ish points per game. Now, if I say, can Utah score 23 points or more in this game, I put the over-under at, we'll say, 22.5. I think a lot of the responses are going to be, I think the overwhelming response actually will be they'll hit the over. But how many points do you really think this offense is going to score? We asked you questions last week during the bye week. Is Mike Bajakian going to add a touchdown per game? Is Mike Bajakian going to be the reason that you're now 30 points moving forward, 30 points a game in your Final Four?
Don't bury the lead. Is Brandon Rose going to be the difference? We don't know. And
we don't know if it's Brandon Rose.
That's not reporting. We don't know if it's Brandon Rose, but that's still a possibility.
I think it's Brandon Rose.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning to.
The poll question we asked earlier this week, everybody thinks it's going to be Brandon Rose. But we have seen this coaching staff. This is where it gets really interesting for me. We have seen this coaching staff that now, I guess, is absent Andy Ludwig's influence. Now doesn't have that. But we've seen this coaching staff in the past, in the very recent past, in 2021, make a decision based on experience.
Mm-hmm.
All other things being equal, give me the guy with more experience and more snaps. We saw that happen in the preseason and in the first 3 games of the 2021 season, where you had 2 guys that in fall camp and in practice, and that's all you had to judge on at that time about Cam Rising, the coaching staff kept telling us they're neck and neck. This Charlie Brewer guy who had starts and had a couple of big wins and had a bunch of actual in-game numbers, this Charlie Brewer guy, the experienced one, is a really good player.
And the guy who was perfect in the spring game. Don't forget that part.
Correct. And then you have this other guy, this Cam Rising, this transfer from Texas, who at that time was an unknown commodity, largely. Who you had all of these sort of like apocryphal stories, these insider like, dude, he has been dicing up this defense. And those were defenses that played well enough to get you 2 Pac-12 championship games.
Yep.
And keep you in Pac-12 championship games. Those were not championship winning teams just yet, but those were championship contending teams. And the defenses on those teams, guys would come away and just be like, dude, this kid Cam Rising was making our lives miserable last year. And you'd be like, really? Interesting. The Texas kid?
He won the job in the COVID season, too. He just got hurt in the first quarter against USC. So there's that part of it, too.
The coaching staff then, in 2021, made a decision erring on the side of caution in my mind and saying, we value experience, in-game experience. We value all of the things being equal.
Health, too, because Cam was coming off that shoulder surgery.
And they said, let's go with the known commodity. It's that devil you know versus devil you don't. I know what this kid, or the thought process was, I know what this kid is good at. I know what he's not so good at. I've seen the tape, and there was a lot of tape, in-game, real action tape on Charlie Brewer.
Brewer was awesome at Baylor.
And guess what? You're in a very similar situation heading into this Holy War game. Now, a contracted sample size on the QB battle, because realistically, it was 4 practices.
Yeah.
That Brandon Rose and Isaac Wilson were splitting reps. You had the bye week where they had 3 hard practices after the recovery day Monday, 3 hard practices. Then the team got the weekend off to recover, to rest, to get the bodies right. This is how it works. When coaching staffs give guys time off in season, they're like, I mean, you could probably find a script somewhere. They sit everyone down in the meeting room, and they say, you're going to get the weekend off, all right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we are not making you do the football thing. Anyone who's on training table, you better show up and eat the meals you're supposed to eat. Anybody who's getting treatment, you better be in that ice tub. You better be getting in to do the stem, do whatever you got to do. You can't miss your treatments. All you guys who don't practice, I don't want a phone call from the police department.
Yeah.
And then you kind of cut it loose. And that means that you had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of competitive practices for Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose. And then, according to information that may or may not be reliable, that little birds tell me, that you had a Monday, Tuesday, a Monday-ish Tuesday, all right, because Monday you try to do it like a regular game week. So it's not the same rest and recovery day that a typical Monday is, but it's still a rest and recovery day, all right? And then you got Tuesday, which is always a hard practice.
Yep, Bloody Tuesday.
And after that, your game plan all the way, right? So let's say this coaching staff took the 3 days of tape and practice and said, all right, these guys are equal. Brandon Rose and Isaac Wilson are equal. They're equally talented. They both have big arms. They both have enough athleticism to escape the pocket. All other things being equal, who do you go with? And in the past, this coaching staff has gone with the experience. Now, neither of these guys are what you call an experienced quarterback.
But Isaac's the one that's a known commodity because you've seen him play more.
He's got starts under his belt. He's a guy who's got Kyle Whittingham told us approaching 400 snaps of live football action, and Brandon Rose has a couple dozen.
Yeah, but on the other hand, Rose has the experience of being in the building. He doesn't have the game experience, but maybe they see him as more of a known commodity because they are more familiar with him.
Okay, I got to push back, though, because going back to the 2021 example, Cam Rising was in the building longer.
True.
And Charlie Brewer was the guy with the game tape, and they went with Charlie Brewer. And guess what? That was the wrong decision. We have the benefit of hindsight to tell us that was one of the worst decisions this coaching staff has ever made. So do you learn from that? And whose decision was it primarily? Was that more of a Kyle Whittingham? That reeks of the conservatism of Kyle Whittingham, doesn't it? Or was that more of an Andy Ludwig saying like, hey, I would rather have this guy because I've seen his tape at Baylor. I'm enamored with that, so let's do it. I don't know who was the primary driver of that decision. If you do, holler at me, 877-353-0700, because I'm trying to figure out as we wonder and debate and ponder on the idea that it's going to be Isaac Wilson or Brandon Rose, is this a program that is sticking to its guns and making decisions like it always did, or is this a program that we should see what they did before and expect the opposite? Because now they're like, okay, that was not a good idea. We learned from that mistake. We're using this hindsight and the benefit of it, and now we're going to do this thing instead. I truly do not know.
Yeah, it feels like sixes, 50-50 either way.
And there's a roll of the dice happening here in a lot of ways. Brandon Rose is the riverboat gambler option here.
Yeah.
He really is. Because, like, with Isaac Wilson, you at least know, okay, I know what he cannot do, so I'm not going to ask him to do this. You have enough tape now and enough knowledge
400
of him.
snaps sounds like a big number. Like, that's not nothing.
It's not zero, right? And but it's also, they're not 400. They're not 400 good snaps.
Yeah, no.
It's not 400 opportunities to be like, wow, look how great this kid is, or look how great the team is performing around this kid. That's another problem. It's not like
we haven't seen a lot of the rest of the team rallying behind him kind of stuff either.
And I don't like I want to be very, very careful about even suggesting that that's something that Isaac might be at fault for. I have no idea. Like, we know the opposite end of that spectrum is magically the team for 2 years and 4 games, every time Cam Rising was on the field, they were just like, ha-ha, I'm a better football player now.
Yep.
I punt better. I backpedal faster. I can tackle better because I know
I get to the quarterback more.
It's insane. Like this magic elixir of the Cam confidence that permeated the entire team. We know what that looks like.
Yeah.
We don't know if Isaac Wilson is just like the baby version of that, or if he's the antithesis of that. We don't know.
Yeah. We just know how it looks and what we've tried to read into how it looks. And when you do that, at least from my perspective, we haven't seen something like the magic that Cam brought from that leadership, that magic elixir leadership intangible thing.
I'm a big fan of the idea that now, if there ever is a time where Kyle Whittingham is going to be Riverboat Ron and he's going to roll the dice, Daddy needs a new pair of shoes, clickety-clackety-clack, and he rolls the dice, now is the time.
What a great nickname, by the way, for Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron.
It also, I love it because it just doesn't seem like it actually fits him.
It doesn't really suit him. No,
he's like a serious guy. But
it's one of the great nicknames for coaches for sure.
When you're looking at how it actually could play out, and remember, what sparks this conversation is, do you believe that there is somebody here that is going to help you score more points than the total that I set for you, 24.5 BYU points? At least half this Utah fan base thinks that you're going to need more than that to win.
Yeah. And let me add some context. The only time they've scored more than that this year was SUU.
Correct.
And it was Cam was responsible for 35 of those points in the first half.
Cam Rising was like closing his eyes and throwing it to Brant Keithy.
Yeah, the only time the other over under you put based on the amount of points that BYU allows per game, 23, 22.5. Utah's only done that once. And again, it was the Baylor game when Cam played for a half, and that they basically scored. They scored all but like 3 of those points when Cam was in that game. So it's unlikely statistically.
So, again, this is me being manipulative with the polls. But if Utah fans think that BYU is going to score 25-plus points in this game, which I think is probably the reasonable answer.
You ought to be able to.
Then Utah's got to score that +1.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a little bit dicey.
And that's probably why I am saying BYU wins close, because I think Utah's going to get somewhere close to 20 points like they have all year long. They've been a little under that lately, but they've been around that 20-point mark, and I just think BYU is going to score a few more. Unfortunately. I know I'm bringing everyone down.
All right, you know what? We'll keep the poll questions coming. It's the Sean O'Connell Show. We're just getting things started on a Friday. We're going to send you into the weekend the right way. The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, is going to join us next. Bill gets a little bit more access than we do. Now, he's careful enough to know he can't let out any state secrets, but I'm going to see if we can get a little hint or a little innuendo from Bill Riley about who this starting quarterback might end up being at the University of Utah. You're listening to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network.
So 3rd down and 2. BYU was 5 out of 9 on 3rd down in the first half. They've got to get to the 25-yard line with Wilson in the gun. Zach will pass. Quick throw outside. Intercepted. Picked off to the outside. Julian Blackman. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown! Touchdown! Blackman with a pick six.
That sound, Julian Blackman pick six back in 2018, the last game at Rice-Eccles Stadium in this Holy War rivalry, comes to you courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, on the call and joins us now on a Friday edition of the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. They could probably use one of those tomorrow.
Well, for multiple reasons. Got to keep the streak alive. Hasn't happened yet this year, so they need a pick six in 2024 to keep that, I guess that would be 20-season streak alive. And yes, the defense or special teams scoring some points would go a long way for the University of Utah. I've been asking the question. We've been debating the question. We've been pondering the question. Isaac Wilson or Brandon Rose, who gives this team the best chance to win against the rival?
I think it's a coin toss. I really do. Brandon's been around the program longer. Isaac's got real snaps, but he's been up and down. There was a reason they took him out of the game at Houston. They wanted to give the offense a spark, and Rose moved it a little bit till he threw the pick. But I don't know that there's a definitive answer to that, Sean. I just don't, because Isaac's had some good moments, but he's had some moments where he struggled too. I'll say this: I don't think it's all on Isaac. I think his wide receivers at times haven't necessarily helped him out a ton. I don't know that the running game's helped him a ton in the last couple of weeks either. I think whoever it is, whether it's Rose or whether it's Wilson or a combination of the two tomorrow, I think everybody's got to up their game. If you're going to try to rely on a guy that's got like 20 snaps and a guy that's got like 400 snaps to beat a number 9 ranked team who doesn't beat themselves, I think you're up in the night. Those guys have to play well, but everybody around them has to play well too tomorrow.
I agree, and I agree with your assessment that it is a bit of a coin toss. And James and I were just talking about, do we think that based on the circumstances, this moment in time that Utah football is living in, that Kyle Whittingham is more of a coin toss type guy right now? Is he more of a riverboat gambler today than he was 4 weeks ago because he's looking for something that can spark this team? He's maybe willing to take a risk that in the past he wouldn't have taken. And I think the riskier proposition here is probably Brandon Rose because it is the relative unknown. That might be an incorrect assessment because of how narrow the margins are between these two guys. But do you think that this coaching staff is more in a mode of being like, hey, we got to do something. I don't know what it is, but we got to do something. Or is it you stick with what you know and you do the system like you've done the system for 20 years?
Well, here's the thing. The offense hasn't been good with what you've been doing. So why not try something else? It's not like Isaac has this gigantic body of work and he's just going through a slump right now. He's a young quarterback who has an opportunity to get a lot better, but he hasn't been great. So to me, if you think Isaac is still dialed in and he's still locked in it, and you're not going to do long-term damage if you still like him, to me, I don't see a downside with starting Brandon Rose, because if you think you can go back to Isaac Wilson, you can go back to Isaac Wilson. Again, I just don't think there's this gigantic chasm of difference between the two guys right now, outside of the fact that Isaac has played a little bit more. I don't – if they decide to go with Rose tomorrow to start the game, I don't see that as a downside. Here's what I think. I think your defense is going to have to play lights out. I think your defense is going to have to keep you in the game, because I don't think you're just going to go from being a pretty inept offense for the last month to all of a sudden becoming the greatest show on turf Rams. I don't think you're going to do that. So no matter what happens tomorrow, I think your defense has to play lights out to keep you in the game, and then whoever your quarterback is kind of integrates themselves into the game just a little bit. So we'll see. I've used the example this week of the Brett Ratliff game back in 05, which was one of the great, underdog stories. But the difference with that was Brett at least had played 2 years of junior college football. Brandon hasn't, but he's been around the program for 3 years. Isaac hasn't, but he has played in 5 Big 12 games. So I don't see a huge downside, Sean, if they decide to go with Rose tomorrow, just simply because it's not like you've got a body of work that tells you otherwise.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page there. I don't know. When I say we all, I mean you and I and I guess the people who've been on the show this week. But we will see how it plays out. And you're right. It's not just the quarterback position. Everybody needs to improve. It's a big ask saying, hey, get way better in your 9th game of the season. As it's been so long established, you kind of are who you are at this point. And I think you just made that point. They're not going to completely reinvent the wheel offensively, and it's not going to magically become this wide-open, high-flying affair. You're also minus a starter. Michael Mokafisi's out for the rest of the year. Money Parks is out for the rest of the year. Which of those is more costly in this game, do you think?
I would say Money Parks because he's a playmaker. I think the offense, they've liked the offensive line all year long, and I think Moai can step in and do a good job at right guard. Mokafisi's really good, but the tackles have been good with Lomu and Fano. Kump's been good this year. I think their offensive line's in pretty good shape. BYU isn't a wildly physical team. They don't have a bunch of sacks. If you've looked at the numbers, they've got a lot of takeaways. They've been very opportunistic, but they don't have a ton of sacks. Now, that's not to say Jay won't bring a bunch of pressure, and I think he probably should tomorrow, just based on the inexperience of the quarterbacks. But I think the offensive line, to be very fair, has done a really good job, Sean. In fact, I think some of the stuff that we've seen has been a little bit of an inexperience from the younger quarterbacks, maybe not hanging in the pocket a little bit longer, because if you've watched it, and Scott and I have talked about it, I think they played pretty well. I think Money being out because he's kind of a proven playmaker, and he's got that speed where if you hit him on a crossing route and somebody misses a tackle, he can go the distance.
Bill Riley, voice of the Utes, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the upcoming Holy War tomorrow night at Rice-Eccles Stadium, 8:15 kick, and you can hear it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Bill, what's it going to take to get Dorian Singer in the end zone? I think he's a great player. Every time he's hustling, he's blocking his behind off. He catches contested balls. He has yet to score a touchdown.
Well, you got to call his name in the red zone. I don't feel like they've really targeted him in the red zone, and that's another issue with Utah football on the offensive side. They're really good between the 20s. They're not so good inside the 20, and that's really the huge difference between Utah and BYU. BYU is an excellent red zone team. They're very opportunistic. They're very good in the red zone. Utah's got to find a way to be better in the red zone. I just think you have to call his number. They've missed him on a couple of long plays, Sean. You and I have seen those where he's gotten behind the secondary, and they've just missed him on those passes. So I think it's a matter of maybe calling his number once or twice in the red zone if you get there, but also if he gets behind a corner or a safety tomorrow night, I don't think you can miss him. I think Utah's margin for error on offense is smaller. And I think some of these games would have been a little bit different had they hit a couple of those plays. And again, I know if ifs and nuts were candy and butts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. So, but I look at it and I say, Dorian Singer, excellent. Brad Keithy, excellent. There's some other targets too. Landon King hasn't been targeted this year, but you've also got Caleb Lohner out there. Let's see what they can do. Micah Pittman. But I think Utah's got the weapons. I just think they can't miss the opportunities when they present themselves.
Mike Bajakian is now like 2 weeks into the job instead of 4 days into the job, which was the case last time we saw him calling plays. And even when he was only a few days into the job, I noticed that he was trying to get Landon King more involved. He was trying to get Munir McClain more involved. He was using Carson Ryan not just to be a blocker in the offense. And now that he's a little bit further established, although still not really established, do you anticipate that trend to continue? Do you think the Utah offense goes to guys who we have not heard you call their names a ton yet?
Maybe, but I think Bajakian's bigger job is calling plays that his quarterback is comfortable with. Does that make sense? I mean, if you go with Brandon Rose, Brandon has, a handful of snaps. You have to call the plays that he is most comfortable with. And if he's comfortable going to Carson Ryan, so be it. If he's comfortable going to Brant Keithy or Caleb Lohner or whomever, so be it. But to me, I'm not worried about getting a bunch of people involved. I'm worried about, okay, Brandon Rose, okay, Isaac Wilson or whomever, what are you most comfortable with seeing and feeling? And BYU's a defense too, and they've kind of always been this way. They don't generally give up the big play a lot. They try to kind of keep everything in front of them. They've been really good and opportunistic. I'm telling my quarterback, if I'm Mike Bajakian, hey, don't force it if it's not there. Don't throw it into traffic. Let's live to play another day, because one of the reasons BYU's been so good this year is their defense has given them short fields, and then their offense has paid those short fields off. If your defense is playing well tomorrow night, use your punt game. Use Jack Baumeister to flip the field. Don't take those chances. But, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they get a few more guys involved in the game. I don't think that's bad. But, to me, find out what Rose or Wilson are most comfortable doing.
Bill Riley for another minute or two talking Holy War here on ESPN 700. I may have been overselling the importance of this game. I don't think I am, but I really feel it is a critical juncture for Utah football in 2024, certainly, but also beyond, because of the fact that now the transfer portal is such an easy thing for players to access, and because Kyle Whittingham is close to the end, if not reaching the absolute precipice. It just changes the atmosphere of the season, that you're on a 4-game losing streak and then a bye and then a really good rival coming into your place. Am I over? To me, I've called it a game of like existential importance for Utah football. Am I overselling the importance? Is this just like, hey, it's a bad year, we're going to write it off, everything's going to be fine? Or could this game be a turning point one way or another?
I don't think it's a huge, big picture turning point game. I just kind of think the season is what it is right now. You're just trying to make the best of a season that hasn't gone the way you hoped. Where I think it's big, though, Sean, is program perception. There's going to be a ton of recruits at the game. BYU and Utah are now recruiting a lot of the same guys. There's a lot of guys now, with BYU being a Power 4 program again and now having some success. They're going after a lot of the same guys in-state and out-of-state. And to me, you've got some commitments from some guys. You want to hold those commitments. You don't want to have them seeing, a team that they may be looking at and considering. So I don't think in the big picture scheme of things it's a program turning point game. But I think in the short term, one, you can kind of help yourself out, feel good about things, knock off a top 10 team. Maybe people have said ruin their season. They'll only have one loss, and their schedule's pretty favorable. I would be really surprised at this point if BYU's not in Dallas, win or lose tomorrow night. So I think they're going to the Big 12 championship game one way or another. But you can help yourself out by getting that win, maybe impressing some recruits and making your fan base feel a little bit better about the win.
BYU is the last undefeated team in the Big 12 Conference, as you are well aware. Utah's on a 4-game losing streak and has looked really bad offensively, as you are well aware. And Vegas sees this as a 3-point spread in favor of BYU. What do they know that we don't, Bill?
Well, I think you look at location, though I don't think location is a huge deal in this rivalry. We've seen both schools win places, but BYU hasn't won in Salt Lake City in 18 years. I think they look at it and say Utah's defense is still really, really good, and Kyle Whittingham historically has been really good against BYU. And, again, I don't want to come off sounding disingenuous here, because I think BYU is really good, but, I was looking at one of those many analytics sites that one of them rates the most fortunate or luckiest teams in college football and ranked them. BYU was number 1 by a lot. And that means they're opportunistic when chances present themselves. But I think a lot of people still haven't completely bought into this BYU team yet, despite the fact that they're undefeated. You even saw that, I think, in the college football playoff poll this week too. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it. But 3.5 points on the road, that's still not a bad line for the Cougars.
Yeah, it's still a touchdown-ish. So
yes, exactly.
All right. Last time, I don't know how it happened, but last time Utah went into a bye week and came out of the bye week, they were more injured coming out of the bye week than when they went into the bye week. And late in the season, especially where last game you were without your two starting defensive tackles. I mean, it's been, unfortunately, a repetitive story now with Utah football. Like, hey, man, we're hurt here, we're hurt here. I'm obsessed with the idea. There has been no Utah football game in 2024 where all the captains are on the field at the same time. They're not all healthy for any one game, and that was, of course, the case last week. What do you know? Is this team healthier coming out of the bye week?
Yeah, from what I know, I think there's a few more guys coming back this week. Obviously, you mentioned the season-ending injuries to Moka Fisi and to Money Parks. Those hurt. I mean, those are two offensive starters and veteran players. But I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think they're going to get a few more players back that have been dinged up over the last couple of weeks.
All right, Bill. Are you going to be calling a massive Utah upset, the surprise of the Big 12 season on Saturday night?
Here's what I'll say. If Utah's defense plays lights out and Utah's offense is able to manage to throw the ball, they don't have to throw for 300 or maybe even 275 yards. But I would be shocked if they don't see 7- and 8-man fronts until they prove they can throw the football. And as good as Utah, I think Utah's offensive line is good. And I think that Mekhi Bernard's a good back. We saw that earlier this year. But nobody, including the great Derrick Henry, runs well into 7- and 8-man boxes. So I think whoever starts at quarterback tomorrow has got to be able to throw the football. Again, doesn't mean bombs and big plays, but move the chain type plays. 7, 8, 10, 12-yard plays to lighten that box a little bit. If they can throw the ball and don't turn it over, and that's a big if because they've turned it over a little bit this year, and the defense can give them maybe a short field here and there. I like Utah's chances tomorrow night. But if they can't throw the ball, Sean, BYU's defense is just really sound. They don't give up big plays. They're just really good and smart and sound. And I just think if you can't throw it to loosen it up for the run, I think it's going to be hard to create some offense. So I think we've got a one-score game, and I think if Utah does those things, Utah's got a great chance to win the game tomorrow night.
This is not about the teams. This is about the voice of the Utes. You've called a lot of these games.
Yep.
It's a rivalry game, though. It's one of the things that makes your job special and makes college football special. Are you a Kyle Whittingham, we do everything the same every week no matter what? Or because it is the Holy War, it is the rivalry game, you take a little extra tea for the voice, or you go to bed a little bit early? I mean, is this game bigger for Bill Riley like it's bigger for the Utes?
No. Well, you and I both know this game in that building is different. Anybody that says otherwise is wrong because you and I have both been in that building the week of the BYU game. But no, my routine doesn't change because I got other things to do. I had to call 2 basketball games this week. I've got one on Tuesday, coaches shows. No, my routine remains the same. The standard, Sean, is the standard, and that's the direction I go.
No days off for Bill Riley, who's been calling some fun running Utes basketball. We'll have some time to talk about that another day. Tell me what's going on with you and Advanced Window Products.
Well, I saw Nate and Jake and those guys the other day. They were on your show the other day too. They're great. They've got a Black Friday November special going on where if you're interested in making your house a little bit more energy efficient this wintertime, give them a call. Let them take care of you. Let them come out and just give you an estimate. Let them come out and measure your windows and see what's drafty and see what's not, because I'm just telling you, if you can save on that energy bill, not just in the wintertime, but in the summertime too, that's going to save you hundreds and hundreds of dollars every year. It's also going to improve the look of your house, and that's what Advanced Window Products does. So, we're starting to get those cold nights now, and the drafty windows and doors might be hurting you. So give them a call. They've got a good Black Friday November special going on right now. Nate and his crew are great. They'll come out. They'll tell you exactly what's going on with your house and then give you an estimate. And then if you go with them, it's usually about 7 or 8 weeks from the day they measure your windows to the day they install your windows, because it's all done locally. They're a locally owned, operated company. It's Advanced Window Products. Sean, I know you've got the website and email. What is it?
850-9100. That's how you get on the schedule. The season high, the yearly high of discounts are available right now. And, of course, advancedwindows.com. You can reach out to them there. Great stuff, as always, from Bill and from Advanced Windows. Bill, we will see you tomorrow night at Rice Eccles.
See you in the booth, Sean.
He knows. He knows I'm going to go in the booth and steal some of their snacks. I do it every week, every time. And you know what?
Snack thief.
Bill Riley.
Snack thief.
He doesn't mind sharing. Now, Scott Mitchell will give me like a little side eye when I go rummaging through the food table. But Bill, he's very generous with the catering up there. And they don't have to eat the same stuff that the rest of, like the plebes, the media.
It's not the media.
It's not the media
food.
Meal. It's always something different. It's always a little extra barbecue.
I think it's a lot of the Utah Youth Sports Network sponsorship food. Yes. Like it's a lot of their clients bringing in food. Mm-hmm. So yeah, probably a little bit better than the media food.
And then Alonzo's always up in his – for people who don't know, the broadcast crew, Bill and Scott and the spotters are down on the front row. And then Alonzo's in like this Wizard of Oz, like throne up top. So he's got an even higher vantage point. And so when you go into the booth, Alonzo's looming over you. And you go in and you start
intimidating.
You start grabbing some chips, and he's looking at you like, what are you doing? And then Scott's glowering in the corner like, you better not take my portion.
And more intimidating, Scott's glare or Alonzo just sitting up above everybody kind of judging people?
That's a silly question. You know that's a silly question. Scott Mitchell is a mountain of a human being. He's so large.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be caught in his crosshairs.
Scott's not the kind of guy you want to upset, all right? Hot Lunch is coming next. Dan Patrick Show, another mention of the Holy War. We'll play the sound for you in 3 minutes. This is the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
Who had the best week in sports? Any sport, any person, any team, anybody. Paul, best week in sports.
BYU football. You know, the conferences may change in a few years, but right now...
You may have just jinxed them against Utah.
Should I retract that statement?
Well, when the Utes pick up the victory, the people at BYU are going to be upset at you.
Wow.
BYU.
They're 8-0. They control their own destiny.
You can't control your destiny.
Right, which is fun to say, though.
I know. But we say it all the time. But you can't control your destiny.
Hence, destiny, it's written for you.
Yes, you can't control it.
Even if you're BYU at 9-0 or 8-0.
Yes. They're going to try to control their destiny against Utah.
The Dan Patrick Show, who you could hear right here on ESPN 792.1 FM, may or may not be deliberately jinxing BYU football ahead of this Holy War game on Saturday night.
They're obsessed with BYU OC. What is that, 2 days in a row now?
They won't stop talking about the Cougs.
They won't stop talking about the Cougars. No, but I hope our listeners see that for what it is. DP's trying to do the voodoo mama juju stuff in Utah's favor.
Yeah, he's doing a little Santeria for Utah. This is the Hot Lunch brought to you by Lemon Shark Poke, right? Like a block east of us here on 300 South in downtown Salt Lake City. Ground floor of the Judge Building. Delicious poke, fresh vegetables, amazing sticky rice. More importantly, they get the fish from the same place that your fancy seafood restaurant gets the fish. That's the big difference about Lemon Shark Poke is their sourcing. They get it every single day. And we spoke with the owner, and he was pretty passionate about the idea, like, hey, you can get good seafood in the state of Utah. You just have to know where to go get it, and you have to be willing to pay the price for it. And at Lemon Shark Poke, they are.
And he's not just talking about brine shrimp either. He's talking actual good.
Can't eat those. Those are disgusting. You can't eat them.
That was the most interesting thing to me when we were over there, OC, was he said even the restaurants in California, we're getting it as fresh as they get it.
Oh yeah, it's
here in Utah.
It's an extra couple of hours, and they get it daily, right? It's on the plane, but unless you're you're on the beach and you're watching them bring the produce and bring the fish from the ocean to the restaurant, even a lot of those places, they get fresh caught fish that has to be processed rapidly, sometimes frozen, but they handle it and they get it to the mainland as quickly as they possibly can, and that's where Lemon Shark Poke is getting their fish. So go check them out. They also have the bento boxes and a bunch of hot items that are really, really excellent. So give them a shot for your next hot lunch opportunity. Also want to remind everybody that, it's crisp outside. It's getting cold. Now's the time to help Utah's homeless, and you can donate unwrapped gifts at Cole West in Centerville or at the Utah First Credit Union locations now through November 30th. We call it Candy Cane Corner, and it benefits families at the Road Home and Volunteers of America. ESPN700sports.com for more details. All facetiousness aside, Dan Patrick and company mentioning BYU. BYU was on nobody's discussion radar prior to the season. The only time you heard BYU coming up was like, hey, guess what? Kalani Sitake needs to have a better year or the seat might start to get hot. And that is a laughable notion at this juncture. And I never thought it was something that you had to be serious about for two reasons, because Kalani's a good coach and also because Tom Holmoe knows the score. He is one of the best athletic directors in the country. Whether you like that or not as a Utah fan, it's true. He has somehow navigated through a really difficult time with BYU going independent and then in other sports going into the West Coast Conference, finding their way into the Big 12, and now look where they're at on all sports fronts. BYU volleyball is really good. BYU soccer continues to be good. BYU basketball is on the verge of changing the game, at least regionally, with some of the recruits that they're in the running for. And, of course, BYU football is the surprise team in college football right now at 8-0 heading into this Holy War rivalry.
Try to control their destiny.
I do enjoy when you find out what the pet peeve phrases are for different radio show hosts.
Yeah.
Dan Patrick's like, you can't. No, stop saying
Don't
control
say
your destiny.
control your destiny.
It's predetermined. You can't say control your destiny. I like that.
He's a predestination guy.
Is that a movie reference again?
No, that's
because that is a movie. Predestination. There's a movie called that.
One's. Yeah, I think you stumped me.
I like that.
Bizarro World.
Doesn't happen very often. All right.
There's a reference.
That's the hot lunch.
And Voodoo Mama Juju was a TV show reference. Do you know?
What TV show is that from?
Should we open it up to the listeners?
Okay. All right. Do you have like a Lemon Shark Poke gift card laying around that we could give something away?
I think we have a few extra.
Okay.
Besides what we give away
All
later
right.
in the show for Hot Lunch.
We've decided we want to do this. James Obscure References. You can actually win something if you know where the obscure reference is from. 877-353-0700. If you know where Voodoo Mama Juju is from, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
If you know where that phrase...
it's not her fault. I'll give you another...
Use it in a sentence like a spelling bee?
It's not her fault. She was exposed to Harry Potter. Is also from the same... same episode of the TV show.
Okay, wow. Now you're getting granular. You know the episode.
Voodoo Mama Juju. It's not her fault. She was exposed to Harry Potter.
877-353-0700 if you know where that comes from. And I'm sorry that I don't, but I'm not really sorry. All right, we take a break. Jordan Wynn, former Utah quarterback, joins us to talk about the rivalry game happening tomorrow night at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Man, I love Billy Joel. I can listen to Billy Joel anytime. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. That was a line from The Office, James.
Yeah, and I'm going to give it to the last text. Even though they weren't the first one to get the right show, this one got the show and the episode. So I'm going to give it to them.
Oh, well, all right.
2409. Angela as Voodoo Mama Juju in the Murder Mystery Game episode. There's been a murder in Savannah.
We got some great responses on the text line today. You know, I said earlier, hey, find me a good player who actually wore number 57 voluntarily. Ricky Jackson came in, Hall of Famer, and that was like semi-modern era. He's only in his 60s. And then people obviously Googled and had to go all the way back to a man named Johnny Blood McNally, who was born in 1903. That's how bad number 57 is on a football jersey, James.
Okay, but you share it with a guy whose name was Blood.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
But I don't actually share it, though. I wore that for one game because they didn't have my real jersey number as a walk-on.
Just take it, man.
You're
sharing it. You're sharing it with Blood McNally.
Yes.
How cool is that? The pirate Blood McNally.
Me, Ricky Jackson, Johnny Blood McNally, and that's it. That's the number 57s that you should care about. All right. Time to talk a little Holy War rivalry with a former Utah quarterback. Jordan Wynn stops by on a Friday edition of the Sean O'Connell Show. Jordan, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Doing all right. What's the worst sports number you ever forced to wear?
God, good question. I think one year in basketball I had to wear like 30-something. It was just like I was late or for registration or something, and they randomly were just like, "Here you go." And I remember thinking, all right, man, there's like no one that I was like 37.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I don't know if there's ever been a 37 in basketball, but all right, I guess that's me today.
I was gonna say like a 32, great number. 33,
yeah.
Great number. You get up to 37, man. That's not good. It's not wonderful.
No, not great, not great at all.
That's all right. Okay. Let's talk about BYU Utah. It's an interesting situation. Obviously, we know the backstory. Utah's season not going the way that anyone wanted it to. They're 4-4, coming off a bye, 4 straight losses. BYU is the surprise team in all of college football right now, still undefeated, the last Big 12 team to remain undefeated. 3-point favorites as they come to Rice-Eccles Stadium. Before we get into the granular stuff, I want to talk about your relationship with this Holy War game. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Did you think it was too much? Do you like, oh my gosh, the fans were such jerks about it? Like, I am just a huge fan of the game. I never actually got to be on the field and play in it. You tell me what you think about this Holy War rivalry game.
Yeah, I love it. I frankly wasn't prepared for the animosity of it my first year in 2009, and found out very quickly how intense it is. And I love everything about it. I think it's what makes college football so unique and so fun. You get a lot of different storylines going into it, the religious storyline, the geography storyline, the historical storyline, and so it creates for a lot of drama usually, and I think as a player, I thoroughly enjoyed all of those environments, whether it was down there at Lavelle Edwards or up at Rice-Eccles. I mean, it's so much fun to be a part of, and hope it continues for a really, really long time. Didn't like not having it on the schedule as a fan.
This week is particularly entertaining for me. It's interesting because talking with Utah folks, Utah alum, nobody's optimistic. Everyone's trying to be a realist, trying to mitigate the expectation and the disappointment and just be like, yeah, we're not playing very well. It's going to be a rough game. And then you talk to BYU insiders, BYU fans, BYU alum, and they feel the exact same way. The pressure has flipped. It's on their side now, which is, I guess, somewhat of a new dynamic and is somewhat surprising. But it's hilarious to me that nobody feels optimistic about the outcome of this game. Someone's going to have to win it, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's got to be a winner. It's funny how it's flipped, and I know from my chair, I feel pretty confident. Team has really nothing to lose, all to gain. Get your season kind of with a highlight in an otherwise really poor year, and Rice-Eccles at night. I mean, I don't know why more Ute fans aren't excited. I'm ecstatic for it. I can't wait. And I actually think, again, I'm biased, obviously, but I think Utah wins.
Love that. I was going to ask you at the end what your pick is, so maybe we'll get a score prediction a little bit later.
Yeah.
Look, one of the reasons why there's so much curiosity around this game is because it's not even clear who's going to start at quarterback for the University of Utah. Kyle Whittingham said that it would be a battle during the bye week and that they would get equal reps. That's not like a spring ball QB battle. That's not like a fall camp QB battle. It's too short to compare that apples to apples, but how much can you prove as a quarterback at a Utah practice in effectively 3 real practices or 4 real practices?
I mean, not a whole lot, to be honest. It's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see who runs out first. Because there's not really a whole lot that can happen unless somebody just has an egregiously poor performance. But even then, that could be an anomaly on the day. Like, there's so many things that could go into that. It's probably way too short to really make a decision. I would lean more that, despite his words, they're looking at it from an overall picture, and what I hope is just they go forward and whoever it is, kind of give them a chance. Right, we're into November. Let them ride out the season. Let them get a ton of playing time and reps, and kind of circle the wagons in the off season.
So both of these guys, Isaac more than once, we've seen him, building a drive, playing well, and then makes the wrong decision, throws a pick. And we saw that from Brandon Rose once because he's only really had enough snaps to do it the one time. And, of course, for fans and for everyone watching, it's like, oh, what is wrong with you? Oh, everyone could see that coming. I know it's a much harder position to play than to have it be that obvious. But what is the thing that makes you stop making that mistake as a QB? Like, how do you get to the spot where you don't do it as often? Obviously, it happens even to the all-time greats, but to where it is not something that is so predictable or for a defense, or it's not something that you can easily confuse a guy, which I know Jay Hill is going to try to do. What is it about seeing a defense and playing the position that allows you to not make those errant throws and throw the interceptions?
Yeah, that's a tough question to ask in a limited time, but I mean, there's so many factors, right? It's film study, how comfortable you get, how organized you get, how you translate that onto the field. It's the amount of reps you see, whether it's during the week against scout team guys and against the opponent's scheme, or even early on in the game to see if they're making adjustments. I think ultimately it just comes down to a confidence thing. And I would venture to say, I don't know if either of them have a ton of confidence going into this game with all the back and forth and what's happening this season. But whether it's Rose or Wilson, whoever can step onto the field with just a little bit of something, a little bit of stuff to them, and go out there and play loose and play confidently. I mean, that's where you start making good decisions. You make crisp decisions. You play freely and play within yourself and use your talents. So I would say, in 3 or 4 practices, whoever showed some confidence and looked great, like, just continue that onto the field. And the age-old saying, if you make a mistake going 100 miles an hour, at least you can teach it. But if you make a mistake trying to be overly cautious and, tiptoeing around, like, it's really hard to perform at a high level. So I would say, the sooner one of these guys can get some confidence, the better off they're going to be.
Jordan Wynn, former Utah quarterback, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about Utah BYU. Coach Witt talked about it in the media availability that, the offensive line is not always being helped by having a young quarterback back there. Sometimes, he's not getting the ball out fast enough. And he said both Brandon Rose and Isaac Wilson were guilty of it. Obviously, Isaac probably more times because he's been on the field a lot more. Was that something you ever struggled with, like holding on to the ball too long and trying to find something downfield?
I don't think so. Like, that probably sounds a little bit arrogant, but from an early age, I mean, it was drilled into my head, like, get the ball out early, live to play another down. If you're throwing it away, or feeling confident in the decision, like, just get it out early. Don't take a shot. Don't take a negative play. Ultimately, stay ahead of the chains. And so that was something, I mean, from, my early, like, Pop Warner days, even, that was just repetitively said. And so I didn't feel like I ever had a hard time getting the ball out. You can usually, again, depending on the comfortability IQ-wise and scheme and film breakdown, I mean, you can really get through your 1 and 2 progression, I mean, within milliseconds, right? Like, you can almost get off of 1 pre-snap. You can get through 2 as you're still into your drop, and really should be, you hit your back foot. You should be making a decision to throw. And if you step up once, it should be, you're getting to 3 and 4. And if you step up twice, you better either be getting it to number 4 or in the progression or running. So that was never an issue with myself, but a lot of it just comes down to how comfortable you feel making those decisions that fast.
All right, so BYU defensively is very good at taking a ball away through those interceptions. Part of the reason why I just asked you about that. But I don't know how much you've been able to watch the Cougs this year. What do you see from them that surprises you? Or what do you think they're doing best?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're super, it's a cliche saying, but like opportunistic. I think they make the big play at the right time. And that's what can propel a season, right? I think, I haven't watched a ton, but when I have watched it, it could be there could be some stalling in the offense or even a turnover, by their own offense, and it seems like they respond right away. And that's a testament to Kalani and Jay Hill and all those guys, right, that have been part of Utah's program for so long and really taken that mentality over down to Provo. And so, it's no secret that when you play against Utah, what they're going to do, right? And I think it's pretty similar to what they're doing down there. They're doing it at a really high level right now. And so you got to take care of the football. They're going to bring pressure and try to, throw some things at you that are going to confuse you. Find a way to feel very comfortable with your film study and your decision-making going into the game. And, just try to eliminate turnovers, especially for these young guys playing QB. Like, eliminate the negative play, stay ahead of the chains, win the field position battle. Utah's defense is playing at an extremely high level. Like, don't lose this thing more than anything is where I would advise these guys right now.
Jordan Wynn for another minute or two talking BYU, Utah here. Holy War Week. Game happens tomorrow night at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You can listen to it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. BYU, we did a little dive into the BYU stats this week, and it's really interesting. They don't have like a star. They don't have a guy that they're going to look for him on 3rd down and 7. They don't have a guy that it's very obvious he is the one who's going to try to take the top off the defense. They've got a bunch of really solid players, and this applies on both sides of the ball, but not necessarily any one world beater. I mean, even Utah's got a top 5 running back in the Big 12 Conference. They got a top 5 tight end in the Big 12 Conference. Van Fillinger is still top 5. He's actually number 2 in sacks, even though he's had a slow 4 weeks. It's a really interesting dynamic. So quarterbacking a team, to have a bunch of weapons that are like B+, maybe B statistically, or to have like maybe 1 or 2 guys that are AA caliber players. Is there a preference?
Yeah, I would probably lean towards having a high caliber guy as a quarterback, right? It's always nice to have a guy like, hey, if I'm in some trouble or having a tough time and just want to kind of get back into a rhythm, like find this guy would be my preference. Now, they've done a nice job, working within their offense. I think their QB's super talented and can run. I mean, his legs have, I would say, been kind of the deciding factor for the success that they've had up there. But like you said, a lot of solid guys, a lot of guys that are playing really well. No one that's like, oh my God, we got to double this guy or anything like that. So it's a little interesting. That's why I'm optimistic about tomorrow night. I mean, you got a guy like Brant Keepy and Bernard that are, I mean, incredible athletes going against a bunch of guys that are like really solid. You know, you would hope one of those guys has a night where they pop off and are the difference. But this game's crazy. You never know what can happen.
All right, so look, you were a leader on a Utah football team. You weren't ever a leader on a team that was facing the dire straits that this Utah team is in. But what would you be saying to your guys going out, you know, leaving, about to run out the tunnel, knowing that you're underdogs at home, knowing that you're the cold team, they're red hot, they're undefeated, they're top 10 in the country. What's the message?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would just be, hey, like, we got nothing to lose. Play loose, have fun. This game is so unique. You get a chance to do it at home. Just go out and have fun and play loose. They got all the pressures on them, right? Again, if I'm a leader in that locker room, it's, hey, look, we get this one done. You never know what can happen after. And then I'm not talking about the Big 12 race or anything like that, but you go rattle off a couple wins and at least end the season on a high note. It adds a lot of positivity going into the offseason. So I'd be chomping at the bit for this opportunity and saying, hey, this is a really good opportunity for us to play a really good football team at home in a very unique setting and situation that could springboard us off to finish the year right. So take advantage of it, have fun, and play loose.
As you're well aware, this game is known for having several epic finishes throughout its history. And you've already told us you think Utah's going to win. Does it come down to a blocked field goal, one crazy play? You know, does someone's name go down in the record books and as legend based on this game?
I mean, I would say based on just historical data, yeah. It probably comes down to the very end. I don't know if it's as, you know, chaotic as a blocked field goal or, you know, a final touchdown in the last seconds. But I mean, I see the game coming down to the last play. If that means somebody fails to convert a fourth down at midfield, that's still a very, you know, exciting and drama-filled situation. I mean, I think I'm optimistic just because of the way the Utah defense is playing. I don't know if Utah's offense can score like, I mean, I don't even know if they can get over 20, the rate that they've been going right now. So I would look for like a 17-13, 17-14 Utah win. Like that's probably the recipe for how they're going to win Saturday night. This game's so crazy, though, it wouldn't shock me if all of a sudden fireworks started happening and it's like a 38-35 game. So, you know, like historically, like this game is just so nuts. But if I'm a like betting guy and you know, pinned me and said, hey, what's the score going to be? Probably like I don't know, Utah wins 17-13.
Jordan Wynn taking a Utah victory and hit the under, according to Jordan Wynn, at the very least. So,
yeah.
All right.
Hammer that under.
Are you appreciate your time today? Were you going up to the game?
I'm not, man. We got our kiddos. It's getting cold. They'll be well into catching some Z's at 8:15. So I got quite a few people coming over to the house. That way we can put them to bed and have a good time and scream at the TV.
It's another great way to take in a game. All right.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Jordan Wynn, former Utah quarterback. Interesting thoughts there. Look, more confidence from Jordan than we've heard really, I think, from any Utah guest and even from any BYU guest. Maybe Austin Collie was as confident as Jordan Wynn was that his team would win. So interesting stuff. Big thanks to Jordan for stopping by. We'll get the blue perspective on this. Jerem Jordan from BYU TV is going to join us on the other side. This is the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700.
Taysom Hill going to look long and try to throw it deep. Being chased. Taysom Hill heaving it down the field and incomplete.
Nope, that
ball
was
game.
BYU pulled him out of bounds.
Incomplete. It's over. Utah wins. Utah wins 4 in a row. Back-to-back in Provo. And Utah wins it 20-13 tonight.
20-13 in the 2013 game. That sound courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Bill Riley and a little Frank Dolce on the call. That was 4 in a row, as you heard him say. On the way to 9 in a row, but the most recent game, 2021, at LaVell Edwards Stadium, BYU got the victory over a Utah team that would eventually go on to win its first Pac-12 championship. What a strange, strange rivalry this is. Quick reminder to all of you, one of the partners on Utah football and their broadcasts, Breitling. New partnership between Breitling and ESPN 700. Breitling are pioneers in timekeeping and unbelievable luxury watches. Find the perfect timepiece at O.C. Tanner Jewelers in downtown Salt Lake City. OCTannerJewelers.com as well. My next guest is a guy I think of when I'm thinking timeless luxury. The face that pops into my head is Jerem Jordan. He's definitely a Breitling type guy, and he joins us now on the Sean O'Connell Show. Jerem, how are you?
How'd you know I had an NIL with him? That's crazy.
I just, I look at you and I'm like, that's a man who wears a nice watch.
I don't even wear a watch, so maybe I will now. Let's go.
All right, we know some people. We'll try and hook you up. Welcome to the show for a little red and blue. Looking forward to it. This is my favorite week of the year on the Utah sports calendar. It's been 3 years since I've had my favorite week, but even though the outlook is much stronger for BYU than it is for Utah, I love this rivalry game, and I always will. I hated when it went away because of the whole independence and Pac-12 thing. What's your stance on this rivalry game?
It's the greatest sporting event in Utah every season. It is awesome. The build-up's exciting. The records certainly play into the conversation every year, whether Utah's doing great and BYU's not, or in the case this year, BYU 8-0 and number 9 in Utah. On a 4-game losing streak, it's still interesting. It's still relevant. It's still awesome. It's still emotional. It still dictates what people are wearing and displaying throughout the week. My mom's a bus driver, Sean. She said the 2 elementary schools she took today in Orem were chanting BYU, BYU all the way to school. So, like, even the kids on the buses are getting after it. I just think it's really fun, and it's great for the state, and I'm glad it's back for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, as am I. And it is so fascinating that the dynamics have worked out to be this way, that BYU is the favorite, even though they're on the road. Now they're a 3-point favorite. I would have thought that it was going to be probably a larger number than this based on how both of these teams have been playing, the injury situation for Utah, the relative good health for BYU. What does Vegas know that we don't, that they think this is going to be a much closer game?
Well, BYU just doesn't have certain like the offense where they're putting up 40 or 50 like the college football playoff likes. They do have explosive defense and special teams, though. So I like to argue with that, which I'm certain will come up in a sec. But BYU's not been a big kind of favorite in a lot of games. They were a dog at UCF despite being 7-0. But like, tell this BYU team they can't do something or won't do something and just see what happens. Like, they have answered the bell. They have broken trends throughout the season, and they are motivated and excited. And they like, last year was a humbling experience in year one of the Big 12, but it's really motivated this team to play the way they played this year. They had a lot of continuity. They didn't lose a lot in the portal. They didn't even add a lot out of the portal. A couple key pieces, but not a ton. And they've been spectacular because the fact that they're 8-0 is amazing. They're not 8-0 in the same way that Oregon's 8-0, or maybe Indiana, but they've also played a tough schedule. Being in a power league is new to BYU still, and they've won every game in the league so far, and they have 2 very good wins. Only Oregon and BYU have 2 top 20 wins. So, BYU's pretty weathered and experienced to this point, and they call it, hey, every week's the Super Bowl, so they've called this week Super Bowl 9. And obviously when you play Utah, there's a certain emotion that comes out, and for many of these players, they've maybe only played in one of these, if at all, on both sides. So I think it's pretty interesting. I haven't read into the line too much each week, just that I know BYU looks at the line, and if it's not favorable, they use that for motivation, just like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance. And I took that personally.
That's the right way to do it. You find the locker room material wherever it's at. I actually think that BYU has some decent locker room material based on the college football playoff rankings. We can get into that a little bit.
Right?
How you call them the 9th best team in the country right now, how they have, 5 or 6 teams with one loss that are ranked higher than BYU right now. It's silly to me, and that's coming from a guy who graduated from the University of Utah, but also graduated from BYU. So whatever. Anyway,
that's right.
Let's not. I don't want to lose the plot here. I want to stay focused on on this BYU thing. They're a really fascinating team for a lot of different reasons, and I know you are deeper in the weeds than I am, but I spent a little bit of time this week just kind of going over the how and the why and what have they done to make this season a possibility. And it is not one individual player stepping up and being the best running back in the conference, the best receiver in the conference, the best statistical quarterback in the conference at least. There's nobody on this BYU roster on either side of the ball that is top 5 in like their particular statistical category. Only the kicker is top 4 in the conference. And so it's just like a bunch of guys doing a really good job. Now, that's not sexy, but it's sustainable in my mind. Am I missing something?
No, you're correct. And part of the college football playoff conversation was, well, they don't have an explosive offense or they aren't winning by enough or whatever. It's like, who cares? Like, what are you talking about? What's the value of playing the games if you don't value winning?
Well, Washington,
you're exactly right.
I don't want to interrupt you. Washington went to a national championship year with last year with 9 one-score wins?
And TCU did it the year before, where they were just making plays at the end of games and they were just gutting things out with Max Duggan, who wasn't like an all-world quarterback per se. BYU is good to very good in almost everything. They're not bad in almost anything. And then they are great in a couple of things. One of them is turnovers. Like BYU is taking the ball away at a crazy rate. They have 18 this year, 14 picks from 11 different dudes. That defense is very opportunistic.
Yeah.
Reminds me of some of the really good Utah teams where I was like, oh, gosh, they're just going to take it away. They're going to score. Points off turnovers, BYU's outscoring its opponent 69-10 in that category. 1 touchdown allowed. It was Oklahoma State off a takeaway. Meanwhile, Utah's pretty good too, 43-6. So I'll be interested to see how many takeaways are in this game and who scores off them. Because to me, that's like if it's like neither team turns the ball over, I feel like BYU wins by 10+. But if there are takeaways, which has been the mantra of great defenses, and Utah's got a great defense, BYU has a great defense, that can change the fortune of the game, especially for a Utah offense that obviously has struggled quite a bit this year.
You don't sound like you're suffering the same kind of nervousness that a lot of the other BYU insiders and ex-players we've had on the show this week. Austin Collie came on and did the Austin Collie thing, but he was like, this game though. And then we had Brian Keel on yesterday, and he's just like, I'm so nervous about it. I mean, look, based on the film, there's no reason to be nervous. Based on the history of this game, there's probably plenty of reason to be nervous. Where do you fall in your level of trepidation?
I get it that people are nervous. We had Austin on BYU Sports Station today, same thing too. He's like, it's going to be close, it's going to be low scoring, And I was like, I feel you. It's like there are a million, I feel like Doctor Strange in Infinity War. It's like I've simulated 14 million scenarios in my mind. But in this case, there's not just one where BYU wins, right? I feel like this could be a classic where it's close and then dramatic and comes down to the wire. I also feel like if Utah doesn't get some confidence building something in the kind of early into the third quarter, that this could get a little weird where BYU could kind of do what it's been doing, which is the last 2 games rushing for 250+. I don't see that happening against that Utah defense, but what if it's 175 or 200? Is BYU being explosive in the pass game? Are they taking care of the football? I feel like if BYU doesn't turn it over a single time, that the Cougars win. Like, does Utah get a spark if it's Brandon Rose? If it's Isaac Wilson, is his wrist okay? Is something different? Obviously with the switch with Bajakian calling the plays. Like, what does that look like? How much is home field going to weigh into this? because we've seen Arizona and TCU go in there and win. So I'm feeling confident that BYU doesn't have to do something very different or spectacular to win. They need to continue to do what they've been doing, which was very consistent, good in all three phases.
As someone who is rooting for BYU to win this game, who do you want to see at quarterback for Utah?
That's a good question, because Isaac Wilson, should he continue on this path, is going to be a spectacular quarterback at Utah, I think. Zach Wilson had similar freshman struggles. Granted, Zach wasn't playing the same kind of schedule here. It took the second half of the season for, one, BYU to put Zach in as the starter in Game 5, and then, two, he went 5-2 down the stretch and won a bowl game. Then in 2018, Zach was ready to beat Tennessee and USC in overtime. It took a minute. And obviously there's not a lot of patience when you're a Utah program that's been to the Rose Bowl the last couple of years, 2 of the last 3, right? And then you're picked to finish the league. That's frustrating. I get it. But I wonder if Utah is going to say, we need to win this game and we need to get to a bowl game, and we feel like we need to give Brandon Rose a shot. So I'm interested to see. If I had to pick, it feels like Rose is going to be the guy. But does that cost you long-term with Wilson? I'm really intrigued by that situation.
I don't think it does. I think that the Wilson family and Isaac himself are both patient enough to know that hey, wasn't quite good enough as a freshman. I can come back and develop and I can win this job again next year. But that's a conversation for another day. Last thing before I let you go, because we're up against the clock here. But for Utah, I feel like if you lose this game, you're not winning anything else. I've been overreacting to the potential loss for a week now. For BYU, you could come to Rice-Eccles. You could lay your egg right here, and you still have everything to play for. If that happens, does this BYU team still play in a Big 12 championship game and still make a college football playoff if they lose to Utah?
You have 3 very winnable games the next couple of weeks. Jeff Grimes returns as the OC with Kansas, and then you've got at Arizona State, which is a tough game. Utah knows that. And then Houston at home, which is they're better than you think. So, but BYU can win those 3, and then you're playing Iowa State or Colorado probably in the Big 12 title game. It's still possible. Everything's in front of you should you stumble. You just don't want this one to be the one you stumble in, because that is an emotional, crazy game. You now create a streak ever since Tyler Huntley said "day so poo-poo." Is it reverse Max Hall? What are we talking about here? There's a lot riding on the line, obviously, for BYU. But if you win this game, you still got an opportunity to lose, and still you have to win the Big 12 title game. But an undefeated BYU in the regular season, you'd like to think, should they lose the Big 12 title game, they'd still get that large. But it makes me a little concerned based on how Tuesday went. So How about you just win out and then win the Big 12 title? But that's hard, man. That's hard.
No, I'm cool with them losing to Utah and then going on and doing the thing, because then Kalani and Jay and all those guys I love so much, they still have a great season, but the Utah fans get the bragging rights for a year. That's the perfect scenario. That's what we're looking for.
We'll have to agree to disagree on that one.
Jerem, I hope I see you up at the game. Or are you going to be?
I'll say hey.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
Thanks, Sean.
Jerem Jordan, our Big 12 insider today, and brought to you by Larry H. Miller, Ford Draper, the Ford King. All right, Lee Sterling, how are we betting this game? If you want to do so for entertainment purposes only, of course, and the other great games of the weekend. Lee Sterling of Paramount Sports stops by next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700. Holy War Week here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show rolls on. We've got airing of grievances coming up in about 40 minutes. Andrea Urban stops by in about 15. Right now, Lee Sterling, number one handicapper in the game, giving us some picks for the weekend for entertainment purposes only, of course. Lee, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm real good. Looks like your game's going to have center billing after all these other games. So I know everyone's going to be watching late night here on the East Coast. So should be fun. What's crazy, I love to go back by at least the middle of the season, look at the rankings and where some of these publications has some of these teams. You ready for this? Look at the Phil Steele Annual. He had BYU 14th and Colorado 13th. Is that crazy?
We were so wrong from the very beginning of the season. Like week 3, I'm like, well, we've been wrong about everything through 3 weeks. This trend is going to continue, and it certainly has. Yeah, I mean, BYU really in the driver's seat for a Big 12 championship appearance at the very least. Colorado still very much in the conversation. And, yeah, nobody had high expectations, but here we are.
Right. Crazy season. It's going to be fun.
And Utah fans are hoping that the chaos of an already chaotic college football season extends to Rice-Eccles Stadium on Saturday night. We will get to that game in just a second here. I want to start off with your list. Washington State is a big favorite against Utah State. How do you see it playing out?
Well, Washington State has the offense, I think, to score on a lot of teams and do some damage. And Utah State's defense is bottom 10 in almost every major statistical category. Washington State can do something. And I don't know if they can get into the college football playoffs, but I think they can get to a nice, decent bowl here. They're playing well. Sometimes you got to lay it if you want to play it. Washington State 48, Utah State 17.
Wazoo to cover in that one, according to Lee Sterling. All right, the Fighting Ashton Genties, Boise State with the Heisman Trophy contender. They are even bigger favorites against UNR. 24 points in favor of the Broncos?
Yeah, I think they'd like, obviously, to get Genty the Heisman, but I think it's a long shot. I mean, I think you got a couple guys, especially the guy here in Miami, Cam Ward, ahead of him. If Miami ends up undefeated, it's going to be tough. People just not enough eyes on them. And then, Miami's undefeated. So I think they're going to get a lead here. They're probably not going to score like they did last game. They scored first 3 possessions against San Diego State. The game was over. Nevada's already played 10 games already. I don't know if there's another team in the country that's done that. 83% of their season is done here. Their run defense hasn't played many good rushing attacks, just teams like San Jose State, Fresno State, Hawaii, Colorado State. Yet they've given up 12 rushing touchdowns in those games here, whereas Boise State has 24 rushing touchdowns in 7 games. I think they get a pretty big lead, and then they pull them. They want to keep them healthy for San Jose State next week. Boise 44-24. I'll take the points here. I think it's a little too high.
All right, we're going to get to some NFL games here before we go to the Holy War, and it's really Super Bowl contenders in this one. Detroit and Houston. Obviously, Detroit, we've talked about them. They've emerged as kind of the NFC favorite. And, Jared Goff and company playing incredibly well. 3-point favorites against Houston.
Yep. So here's what I was surprised at. Last week at Green Bay, first game Detroit's playing outdoors all year. I thought they'd turn the ball over, pouring rain, or at least have a couple drops. No turnovers, not one drop pass. Green Bay was the team that threw a couple interceptions and also had 6 drop passes. This team's on a roll. They got some defensive line help at the trade deadline. They get back their number 2 receiver, Williams, here in Houston. I just think they got too many problems protecting the quarterback here. I'm going to keep riding Detroit. You ready for this? The last 35 years, a 4-year run by any team against the spread. I thought it was Kansas City with the best record. No, it's Detroit, 42-17.
Whoa.
They moved to 43-17, 31-24.
The Commanders and Jaden Daniels, unbelievable rookie season happening. Hand them all the awards for the young players now. They are favorites against Pittsburgh.
I'm probably not going to go against this guy much more. This might be one of the last times. I don't go against top-tier, top 3, top 4 quarterbacks, and I think he is going to be a guy that, just like Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, very tough to go against. I think he's going to win the Rookie of the Year award. I think he's going to be in the top 3 in the MVP voting, but Pittsburgh has the better all-around team, the much superior defense, and Mike Tomlin, 12-4 coming off a bye, including 6 straight victories following a week's rest here. Washington's run defense still ranked 29th, and that's how the Steelers roll. They'll run the football, set it up with play action for Russell Wilson here. I like Pittsburgh. They pull away 34-23.
Upset there in the Commanders versus Steelers game. The free play this week is I know you're going to trick me on this. It feels like such a no-brainer. Kansas City, 8-point favorites against the lowly Broncos.
Yep. Anyone wants to get it, just call 800-400-9741. We'll give it to them for free. I have a real strong feeling on one side. I think there's a clear right side winner here. 800-400-9741. We have bringing back our world famous Baker's Dozen. 13 games combined Saturday and Sunday. We've had some 12-1, 11-2, 10-3 records on this. We've won 10 out of the last 12 times we put this promotion out. 13 games if you've never been with us before, just $97. Now, are you ready? Ready for the big one?
Yes.
All right, here we go. So, looking at this game, and I feel that Utah's going to have to do something early to have a chance. I don't know whether it's a trick play or play action bomb, first or second play out of the gate. If they fall behind, they're in trouble. Don't know who's going to quarterback. They're still keeping it close to the vest, Wilson or Rose, correct?
Correct.
I don't know if they can do enough damage here if they fall behind in this game here. They haven't scored 22-10, 19-7 points for the last 5 games. BYU 35.1 points per game this year, and they're 6-0 when facing Utah. When they're ranked in the top 10, BYU 24-17.
I was afraid you were going to hurt our feelings like that, Lee.
Sorry.
You know what?
I'm rooting for you, though. What do you think happens? I have a question to you. You know, we're all looking at this college football playoff. Let's say, hypothetically, BYU goes undefeated in the regular season, plays in the Big 12 championship game, and loses. Do they still get in?
I think only if they go undefeated in the regular season. I think that a 2-loss at that point, Big 12 champion, I think the committee showed us they have no respect for the Big 12 conference, and they're not going to reward anyone. So, look,
It'll be interesting. Here's going to be something that's interesting. Let's see if BYU and Miami end up undefeated in the regular season. If both those teams end up undefeated, those conferences make a lot of money if they put 2 teams in, and the only way they're getting them in is if, let's say, SMU or someone like Colorado, Iowa State upsets BYU.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out, but I don't think the Big 12 is going to get 2 teams in this year. And
well, if BYU's undefeated in the regular season and loses, they deserve to be in the playoff. Maybe not, a top 6, 17, but at least 10, 11, or 12.
It's wild that we're having this conversation heading into the 9th contest for BYU when those preseason expectations were what they were. Lee, enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for your time.
Take care. Be safe.
Lee Sterling, Paramount Sports. All right, we're half an hour away from the airing of grievances. We start hour number 3 next with Andrea Urban. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
Wilson, play action, pressure off the edge. Looking to throw, stepping, throwing, intercepted. It's picked off in the flat. That's Francis Bernard. 25-20, 15, 10-5, and it's a touchdown. It's a house call for Bernard. 57 yards and a Utah touchdown.
Francis Bernard, pick 6 from the 2019 game. Courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. You heard Bill Riley again on that call. If I'm not mistaken, that was the first score of the game, I think. Can't remember. But also, that was maybe one of the first times, correct me if I'm wrong, 877-353-0700, where we saw a former Coug score against the Cougs in the rivalry game.
And a former Coug who had an iconic interception in the rivalry game in his time with BYU. So, like, two kind of iconic interceptions for Francis Bernard, one on each side.
That's pre-transfer portal as we know it, by the way.
Yeah.
So, a little bit different dynamic back then. All right, let's get into another conversation about this Holy War rivalry. Rice-Eccles Stadium, Saturday night, 8:15 kick right here on ESPN 700. We've got pregame for you. We've got pregame for you. Porter Larson is going to have that with who's he got a bunch? He's got like a whole cast of characters. He's going to be up at the coat drive, right?
Yeah, he's going to have a bunch of former BYU and former Utah greats who also played in the NFL, part of the NFL Players Association coat drive up there. So he's going to get a whole cast of characters on, and there's going to be plenty of former Aggies up there too as part of that coat drive. So we'll see who it'll be. Probably Sly. I would guess probably Sly, probably Nate Orchard, and a few others from the blue side.
Well, I'd bet a considerable amount of money that our next guest will also be there because she is absolutely everywhere. Andrea Urban joins us here on the show. Andrea, how are you?
Hey, good. I actually love it so much. I wasn't sure if you were starting with the Francis Bernard highlight clip because that was my first ever Holy War as a reporter in Salt Lake City. And
it's completely planned, Andrea. We totally knew that.
Right. And Francis was one of my favorites because I had just gotten here and I didn't, really quite understand like that he was left BYU, came to Utah, and it was like this little chip on his shoulder. And then to get the pick 6, and then I was standing in the end zone that he ran towards. And so I got the flash in the U at the BYU student section with my camera right there. And it was one of those like, oh, so this is what it's all about. And that's exactly what I got to feel. So it was so crazy hearing that because that's what I was going to bring up on this call.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, there it is. James totally knew that. He did the research, and that's why he came in with that call. Well done by you, James.
Yeah, that's why they pay me the big bucks around here, OC.
That is why they pay the big buck.
Yeah, you're right. I should be more accurate about it.
That's why they pay the big dollar. All right. Andrea, so look, I said at the beginning of the show I was excited to talk to you about this because we've had a bunch of people on the show this week that are like, 20, 25 lifer, like people that are years deep into this rivalry game. And you are, while you've definitely really dug into the sports scene here in Utah, you are a transplant to our home state. And you've been around some of the other great rivalries in college sports. So your thoughts on this Holy War game, especially given your introduction to it that you just laid out for us, and now obviously being a little bit further in.
Yeah, I definitely think that when it comes to a rivalry game, records don't matter. I went to Michigan State, and I know anytime that the Spartans are playing U of M, it just records are out the window, rankings or statuses or standings are just out the window, and everybody shows up and plays their best ball. And I know that the Utes need just kind of a push in the right direction, or like a recaliber, just so I can see these guys smile again. It's just so sad around, Utah right now because, this is not what anybody expected. I will say BYU is rolling. I was down there this week for practice, and the vibes are good. The coaches are upbeat, and I just know that the Utes could redeem their season with a win, an upset, which is also crazy to say when this rivalry has gone to 9 straight with the Utes and just the last one to BYU. But this is looking like BYU's game with their success and just how fundamentally sound they look and feel and are right now. But I know that when it's red versus blue out there, anything can happen.
Well, that's kind of the hope for Utah fans, right? That because you don't look at it on paper and you don't look at it based on especially the last 4 games and say, oh, yeah, well, Utah's better than they are here, so it's going to be fine. You just need to get this. I'm looking at it. I've been asking the question a bunch of different ways, and it's like, okay, if Utah can win this game, how do they win this game? And most of the consensus is you got to hold BYU well under their scoring totals for the season. They're scoring 35 points a game. You probably have to cut that in half. And even still, even if you can do that, I don't know how you make sure you score 18 to 20 points if you're this University of Utah football team. So your thoughts on what it's going to take scoring-wise minimum for Utah to get this one done?
Yeah, one thing is I want the Utes to be prepared on all 3 phases. I know that's such an annoying statement right there, but what I've noticed with the BYU team is that the Cougars are finding the end zone on defense, on special teams, and on offense. But you see other successful college football teams, and it's like, okay, that quarterback pass play touchdown, run touchdown, but when you've got kick returner who is able to run at 103 yards and score, or their defense is very well known to knock the ball, fumble, pick it up, and return it for a touchdown, those are the just demoralizing scoring opportunities that BYU does take advantage of. And I want Utah to be prepared for all of those because it seems to be kind of their superpower in the fact that they don't need to be on offense to score the football. But yeah, we got to hold the Utes got to hold them under because I don't know. I just BYU, like I said, is rolling, and you know what? They deserve it. It's been a long time since BYU has had their season like this, and I know that it's hard for Utes fans to even fathom this, but this is what Utah did pretty much my entire time of being here. That's why I know this team so much better, is because that's what I was getting paid to do, was travel and cover these guys winning Pac-12 championship games. And so, but yeah, let's just hold down their scoring when it comes to the time of the game when you don't necessarily think they're going to be able to find the end zone. I feel like that's going to be BYU's strength there.
So BYU is the 9th-ranked team in the country right now. They're undefeated. And they're the 9th-ranked team in the country. The recent college football playoff rankings came out. Properly rated, overrated, underrated. What do you have BYU on the top 25 in Andrea Urban's mind?
It's funny because you have an undefeated record, so you just ultimately get to climb the polls. No matter what, even if your performance was a little rocky, it's like, well, they're still undefeated, so let's move them up. I would put them at an 11 or a 12, just because there has been some games where I'm a little iffy on their offense, and just how BYU is able to score in other ways is almost because the offense can be inconsistent. But I don't think that they're undeserving to be one of the best teams in the country. That's definitely not it. And I try to choose my words wisely because I speak to Cougar fans, I speak to Utes fans, and this runs very deep. Like you mentioned earlier, people have been invested in this rivalry, since they were born, and it's real and passionate, and they mean it. And if I say, hey, BYU's pretty good, they're like, how dare you? And so I would move BYU down the AP top 25 just a little bit, just because of some of the inconsistencies I have seen. But it doesn't mean that they aren't deserving of being kind of just this national recognition that they're getting.
Look, we're not going to get into an argument here on the show because I appreciate you being a guest. and Utah fans love to hear what you just said, but I could not disagree with you more. I would have them higher, but we don't. That's not
higher.
That's not what we're here for, though. I'm
Wait, no, I would love to, because honestly, where would you put them? Five?
I probably would have them between 5 and 7 because they are undefeated. They're one of 2 teams in the country who have 2 top 25 wins. It's them and Oregon, and I've always been this way. This is not a BYU or a Utah thing. I think actually you're more impressive as a team if you win ugly sometimes because otherwise you're just a front runner. If you're a hyper talented team that blows everybody out and nobody can touch you, yes, you're good and you deserve a high ranking, but at some point it's going to come crashing down. I feel like BYU has they've been tested a little bit, and I'm impressed with the way that they've reacted. And this is something people are probably sick of hearing me say because I've beat it to death the last few days, but they are somehow good as a team without anyone being great individually, Andrea. They don't have one single performer who is dominating any statistical category. There's no receiver leading the conference in touchdown catches or in yards. There's no running back who's just destroying everybody. It's really fascinating that it's truly a team dynamic, and I think that's incredibly sustainable. Would it be nice for BYU to have a game where like Tyler Batty has 4 sacks? Yes, of course. But that's not how they're doing it right now. So it's really fascinating to me.
I actually love that, and I'm appreciative that you, as a Utah guy, is able to kind of say that because I don't know. I didn't also play the game of football, but from my observation, sometimes I'm just like, oh, this is a little rocky. But when you put it into that perspective of the fact that they are definitely a team, like this is a team game. Like, and I mean, if you point at what Utah football is going through right now, when you lose your star, Cam Rising, and now everybody's running around like they don't even know what to do because their leader is gone. I think that wouldn't hinder BYU because they are playing so well as a team. Yeah,
it's really interesting just the differences, right? The juxtaposition of what Utah's going through and what BYU has surprised us all with. And, you know, I would hate it. I would hate it violently if it wasn't for the fact that Kalani Sitake's the head coach at BYU because I love that guy and I love a lot of the guys on the staff. Otherwise, you just hear me like refusing to talk about the game because I just couldn't stand how good BYU is. But it's fun to see them have a little bit of success. All right. Andrea Urban, by the way, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about this upcoming Holy War. It's been oversold and overblown, especially this year, the effect that Rice-Eccles Stadium can have. And there's a lot of Utah fans selling their tickets. Spoiler alert, that's in the airing of grievances coming up in about 12 minutes. But, you know, what kind of environment do you expect? Late night, kind of cold, your team's been underperforming. The legendary noise of Rice-Eccles Stadium has been lackluster at least a couple of times this year. Do you think we see a return to form from the environment, at least, from the fan base, at least, for Utah?
Well, I hope so. I hope so mostly because, you know, these Utah fans seem to be very supportive and very proud when we're there competing for championships, and they fall off real quick. Was surprised. I will say I was surprised by the turnout of the last Utah football game that I went to. I was surprised that the seats, it looked pretty much sold out, or at least the seats up top were even still full. And I said that to the other media guys on the sideline. I'm like, whoa, I'm surprised that there are people in the stands when. I think that was a TCU game. Yeah, it was a TCU game. And then, of course, people started to weed out early. No, I'm worried that there's going to be more blue than red in that stadium, and I want to believe that that's not going to be what happens. But with how sour and bitter Utah fans have been lately and just the things that I have been seeing and reading, it really hurts. It hurts me as someone who didn't even go to these schools, but like I get the opportunity to get to know these guys, these coaches. Like you mentioned, I did a story this week on the BYU assistant coaches and who has either played or previously worked at the opposing school, and talked to Jay Hill and Justin Enna, and and more. And it's just so cool how deep the ties are. Like, take the wins and losses out of it. These players and coaches know what's at stake, and they should get the support from the fan base. But I'm worried that there might be more blue there.
Okay, do you think that this game has big picture ramifications for Utah football? I've been painting the picture all week that this is massively significant, not only for the 2024 season, but as a potential catalyst or decision-making moment for, Kyle Whittingham about his future, for players who are on the roster right now who might not want to stay if they're not consistently competing for championships. The transfer portal makes that a reality. You want to win because it's a rivalry game and you want to get off this slide, but in my opinion, you also want to win because you got to protect the culture of Utah football, and you have to kind of build this wall around what has been happening in and around it. Where do you stand on the idea that this game could carry long-term side effects if it doesn't go Utah's way?
Yeah, this is what I hate about sports, only because I build these amazing relationships and get to know people, and then in the end, if you're not in the win column, you suffer. I don't know if I want Kyle Whittingham to go out like this after all that he's done for the program and even just for Utah, the state as a whole, and putting Utah football on the map in so many capacities over the years. It makes me sad to think that this game or just really this season could be the end of it all. Like, I don't necessarily know if Morgan Skelly is going to come in and save the day. Like, I just don't. I think that when you lose your starting quarterback to an injury yet again that nobody planned for, that's a rough thing to deal with. And then so many more injuries after that. Like, that's just, and Kalani Sitake actually said this recently in one of his pressers, was you have to go through the dark to come out and have this moment of shine. And I couldn't agree with him more. Like, you grow when you're going through these things so that you can now come out and be better. So I want to hope and believe that this is not the end for Kyle, and that next year everyone can have some belief and turn this thing around and be the team that we know that they are. You just can't fault them when you lose your star that you thought was going to essentially change the whole entire trajectory of this program.
Last thing before I let you go, Isaac Wilson or Brandon Rose, who's starting when this game Utah takes the first snap?
It's so funny because I think with just no talking to anyone around the industry, I said B. Rose. I said Brandon because of the confidence booster that he kind of instilled in them, and then also he was the one to speak to the media this week. But then as I speak to other people throughout the week, it's like, well, that's Kyle trying to throw us for a loop, where you speak to Brandon Rose, but really it's going to be Isaac Wilson, and Isaac was only benched to light a fire under him. And if Isaac had a great week in practice, I am confident in Isaac, but the natural swag and kind of confidence that Brandon Rose has, I do think brought a little bit of something. So I'm going to go with Brandon Rose, but everybody else around this place is telling me, what the heck are you thinking? It's Wilson. So,
Andrea, we will see you up there. Appreciate your time as always. What high school game are you going to tonight?
Oh my gosh, so many. I'm headed up to Timpview here in a little bit. And then Lehigh after that, and then I'll go to UVU for state volleyball, actually, after that.
That's the most Andrea Urban response ever. I say, which game singular are you going to? She's like, yes, the games, here they are. Like, wow. That's fine. No, it's a flex. We get it. You work way harder than we do. We're impressed.
It's not like that at all. Trust me, man. I would sit here and rest up if I could, because I know tomorrow is going to take it out of me.
Wow. All right. Amazing. See you up there. Thanks for your time.
Thanks. See you guys.
Andrea Urban, hardest working probably person in the business, in the sports radio, or not sports radio, in the sports media business here in Salt Lake City. She is everywhere. I joke about it sometimes, like how many copies, how many clones of Andrea are out there. But you could go to one high school game and get the result and like see how the whole thing plays out. She's going to 2 plus a volleyball event. So wow.
Yeah, I also love that you asked her about football and you didn't, and I would have been in the same spot and we both would have been like, yeah, we forgot who we were talking to. She's obviously going to state volleyball too, because she's going to everything.
I got a 4-H competition. We're gonna see who bred the best looking pig. Yeah. I'll be doing an exclusive with Bryson Barnes down there. It's like, what? Just relax, man. Kick back and relax. Be lazy like the rest of us.
Good pig farmer reference by you too.
What I did?
That was pretty good. Bringing home the bacon with the references.
I have a phone number for you: 801-850-9100. Call them and set up an appointment to get your windows measured, to get them counted up, and to lock in a potential discount that is the top discounts for the year. Before you go into next year, lock in the discount pricing of 2024 at Advanced Window Products. Here's the thing. I've been telling you every day for I don't know however many months, you should probably pay attention to this now. Hey, you should probably take a look at whether or not your windows are energy efficient, and you probably make sure that when you touch that glass, the temperature outside is not the same as the temperature inside. You're now paying attention to that because it's cold. Because at night we're down into the freezing temperatures, and guess what, guys? It's not getting any warmer. We can deal with heat a lot better as human beings than we can deal with cold. You're going to hate it if your gas bill goes insane, and you're going to hate it if your house is cold in the mornings when you wake up and you're on your bare feet on those floors and they're frigid, all right? Advanced Windows is going to help out with all of that. Give Jake a call. Give Nate a call. Give Advanced Windows a call at 801-850-9100. If you're looking for 10 windows or more, massive discount, the biggest discount of the year just for you. And you can lock in the discount pricing, and you don't have to worry about getting them installed right away. You can say, hey, I actually want it done in the spring because I don't want windows taken out of my house while it's cold. I don't have to deal with snow, deal with rain, whatever. They'll operate on your timeline, but give them a call right now or go to advancedwindows.com. All right. Airing of grievances is coming next. And remember that story I told you about LSU bringing in a live tiger to the stadium? I have an update on that and a grievance to air about it. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. 877-353-0700. That's the Dish Pros text line. You can also call us at the same number if you want to air a grievance. Just get it off your chest heading into rivalry weekend. Let's see what you got. Actually, caller right off the bat. Kyle from Murray has a grievance to air. Go ahead, Kyle.
OC, how you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
Good. So this one's for University of Utah fans and basketball ones specifically. I need you guys all close for this one. There's no reason why 6,700 fans should show up to watch the men's team play, and just about half of that shows up to watch the women's team play one time slot before that. This is a great team. I mean, fantastic. What have they been, 70 and 20-something the last 3 years? They've been in the tournament every year. Everybody should be there. If you're a Utah fan, we have these seniors who showed up and picked Utah after we went 5-16 one season. This is the time to show them what that means to us as a community. So I think everybody needs to be at these games.
So your grievance is with basketball fans who are not giving the Lady Runnin' Utes their time.
Absolutely.
I'll take it. Glad you got it off your chest. Thank you for calling. 877-353-0700. Now, I'll say this. Utah women's basketball games, especially if you have kids, you're going to have a hard time finding anything better to do as a family activity. All right? If you're a basketball purist, if you're a hardcore basketball fan, or if you are not, it is a fun and phenomenal time.
Well, they're part of the reason why, and Kyle spoke to this, is not just how good they are, but they play a really entertaining brand of basketball too. So like you said, that doesn't necessarily apply to people who aren't necessarily basketball fans that are going to have a good time at the game. But if you're a basketball fan, like, this is really fun basketball too, the way Lynn Roberts coaches the team.
By the way, if you look at the two games, and it's only been two games so far, and it was against Southern Utah and Weber State, but they've effectively doubled the output of both of those teams. They've effectively doubled the scoring of their opponents so far this year. Coach Lynn Roberts is amazing. She's wonderful. James, maybe you know. I don't know if they do it every single game, but I got season tickets for myself and my daughters a couple years ago, and I would take them down on the floor, and they just get to hang out and, like, take pictures with the players, and you get to talk to Coach. That doesn't happen at NBA basketball games, at men's basketball games. It's part of the atmosphere up there at the Huntsman Center when the women are playing. So absolutely worth your time.
Yeah. Yeah, we're with Kyle on there. Grievance filed.
Grievance filed and co-signed?
And co-signed.
All right, fine. All right. I have a couple of grievances to air. I'll start with one, and this is a personal life grievance, okay? Not a personal life grievance. A grievance from my personal life.
Getting personal here, okay? Okay.
So this
Ready
happened.
for it. I'm here for it.
I think I told you this off air. What was it? My grievance is with people who try to break into and steal other folks' stuff. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I left my vehicle in my driveway. I don't live in a dodgy neighborhood.
Not smart by you, leaving it in the driveway.
I left my vehicle in the driveway, and I came out, and someone had rummaged through my car. The console contents were strewed all over the place, and the what do you call that? The glove box emptied out, and the back tailgate had been opened, and they're clearly trying to be sneaky because all the doors they opened, they, like, closed them but didn't close them. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Didn't, like, make the noise of slamming them shut again.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure it was the wee hours of the morning or whatever. So my grievance is with whoever is out there being like, oh, let me see if there's something in this person's car that I want to steal for myself. Grievance aired.
Grievance filed, grievance co-signed.
Don't be that person. It's just
that's ridiculous.
It just sucks. Now
it's in your driveway too. This isn't in a parking lot downtown or something like that. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, in my drive. And you feel violated by it. You know, people talk about that all the time when, like, their house gets broken into.
Yeah.
Even if they don't lose anything valuable, it just feels like your space has been invaded. It's not a good feeling. I was kind of proud of myself for not having anything of value in my car.
Good job.
If you don't want stinky gym clothes, then don't try to break into my car. There's nothing in there for you. All right?
I said good job, but is that a reflection of you not having cool stuff? Is that what's going on?
I didn't have anything good in my car, except I'll say this. Joke's on you, whoever you are, because you could have
probably listening.
You could have inconvenienced me greatly I had my Utah Hockey Club season credential
Ooh.
hanging on the rearview mirror in the car, and they just obviously they can't buy anything with that, or they probably didn't feel like they could
probably
trade that
didn't
for anything.
necessarily know what it was either.
So thank goodness they didn't take that, because I was like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
But it was right there on the floor. It was great. So we're good. But grievance aired.
Yeah. Seriously, stop breaking into stuff. We know you're listening too, by the way.
Probably are listening.
You're probably a fan of OCs. That's why you broke in. You thought, I'm going to get something cool of OCs.
No, because there was a pair of underwear they could have taken. So.
Oh, okay.
Left it there.
Moving on.
All right, you got a grievance? What's up?
My grievance is it's Holy War related. It's been a long time since both teams have been good at the same time, man. I mean, 2021 technically, but they played that early in the season, and no one really saw Utah having the season that they ended up having, so I'm not sure that counts. I know the games are always close, and hopefully that's the case tomorrow, and it doesn't really matter what each team's records are, but I just want to – can we get back to where both teams are good at the same time for this Holy War game? And it's just unfortunate that BYU's having a surprisingly great season, and Utah in a year when they were supposed to be great is not having a good season.
Look, I'll say this. As much as I've been driving home this idea that like this could be Ute-mageddon, this could be a doomsday for Utah football, this program is never again going back to mediocrity. It's not over long term, like not over 5 years in a row. It's not going to happen. All right. The community is totally invested, and more importantly, the university is invested now. They've felt the effects. They've known what it looks like when you have a good football team, and they've invested financially into making sure that's a reality and something that can continue moving forward. Now, BYU has as well, and they caught up this year, and they leapfrog potentially this year, and we'll see. But that doesn't mean it's going to remain that way like we're in the 1970s again. Utah football is now a Big 12 team. It is now a university that's always had a great reputation and an athletic department that has had a great reputation for 30 years now. If Morgan Scalley is not the long-term answer, and I think he will be, then guess what happens? They go out there and they spend a bunch of money and they find the next rising head coach, the next Urban Meyer type candidate, and they look for that. Like, yes, this could be problematic, and I'm not going to say could be, will be problematic in the short term if Utah loses the game tomorrow, especially if they lose badly. But in the big picture sense, Utah fans, you are never, ever going to be in a situation again where BYU beats you every year like it was LaBelle Edwards era. It's just not going to happen. You have the investment, you have the reputation, you have smart people running things, and this is more likely a blip on the radar than it is a downward trend.
Yeah, and where that's really coming from, as people know by now or should know by now, I don't consider myself in the fan base of either team, but as a native Utahn, I've just kind of rooted for both to be good and relevant because I think it's good for the sports scene in Utah. And it's just been too long, man. I want it to get back to where they're both, particularly in football and basketball too, like men's basketball. It's been a long time that way too, but particularly in football, I just want it to get back to like, what was it? Was it late 2000s, end of Mountain West era, where both were kind of on the national scene as potential BCS busters. I just am jonesing for it to get back to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was early 2000s where it was
and
like
that too.
BYU was supposed to be the first BCS buster, and then Utah ended up being the first BCS buster. So, look, don't fret. Nobody stress. Don't worry long term. In terms of tomorrow, stress as much as you want. In terms of next season, stress the hell out. That's fine. But both of these teams, let's say that the Big 12 exists at least for 5 more years. BYU and Utah are going to play Big 12 games that have conference championship implications in at least 3 of those 5 years, James.
I hope so.
Mark my word.
I hope so.
All right. Okay. Is Alonzo going to join us in air grievance? Are we? Oh, my guy.
Yo.
Up getting things situated at the stadium for tomorrow's broadcast, I assume, right?
Correct. It's very cold. I am a little too tropical for this environment.
Well, there are things you can put on: gloves, hats, coats, boots that are going to help with that. But go ahead and air your grievance.
Well, grievance number 1: don't tell me what to do, OC.
Okay. Noted.
Piggybacking on what that caller said, if you have not had the opportunity to go to a Utah women's basketball game, go. I got to. I was fortunate enough to engineer both of them since there was a doubleheader. Please go. To OC's point, the environment is great. So check it out. Grievance number 1. It's sports related, of course. The Bengals not cashing in on that offensive output and losing to the Ravens the way they did, out of pocket. A lot of respect to Lamar Jackson, though. Lamar Jackson is probably going to be the MVP.
You can't give Lamar Jackson 30 seconds to score because he'll find a way.
Nope. That's. I mean,
that was tough by the Bengals. That was a Bungles game by the Bengals.
Okay, well done, James. 428 passing yards, 4 touchdowns for Joe Burrow, 264 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns for Jamar Chase. My fantasy team was thriving, except their defense was trash. I got negative points from the Bengals defense, but that's
even the Ravens defense wasn't good. But
no.
What a fun game, though, right? I mean,
it was a great game. Great game. I watched it on the phone while we were doing the men's basketball game last night. So also come out to a men's basketball game. That's a fun brand of basketball they're playing right now for the Utah men's, the Fighting Craig Smiths. Come out to one of those games. Mongolian Mike is a bad dude.
Crazy. I just got a text grievance from Alonzo's boss. Grievance Alonzo watching football games while he's supposed to be working basketball games. Wow, crazy how it all comes down fast.
When you can multitask, you can multitask, my guy. Second grievance, it's a personal one as well, kind of. I was at the airport in Portland with my wife. We went to Portland over the weekend, and there was this lady that was upset that she had to wait in line to get onto the plane. Regrettably, hate to let that lady know that I'm so sorry that we're all not as cool as you, and we all have to wait in line to get onto the plane.
Ma'am. We have a solution for you. If you don't want to wait in line to get on a plane, buy a plane.
I was about to say, buy a plane, fly private, and then you'll be good. Also, you buried the lead on your car break-in situation, OC, because what happened is they broke in and they left you 2 San Francisco 49ers tickets. That's what happened.
Oh, I see what you
man.
They're not that bad. That joke only applies if a team's like really, really
hilarious
bad.
Joke.
Well, I can't do the jazz thing because it's like we have credentials, so it doesn't matter.
Wow.
But
and we all are kind of secretly wanting them to be bad too.
I mean, I don't care.
Some
I'm a
people
Laker fan.
openly. Well, not you necessarily, but the rest of us here. Some of us openly wanting them to be bad, others just kind of quietly.
Grievance that you have to remind people you're a Laker fan every time you come in here.
I live in Utah, but I'm not really one of you.
I'm sorry that I am not one of you, so that's my bad. But the NFC West is bad. It's not a good football conference. OC, you know that.
Why are you doing this? Grievance aired with you again.
Wow.
Should I just hang up on him right now?
Grievance with James. He hasn't already hung up on Alonzo. Do you have more grievances?
No, those were all the grievances. Okay. But I will see you tomorrow up here at the miniature Frozen Tundra.
Yes, it'll be fun. Looking forward to the game tomorrow night at Rice-Eccles Stadium. All right, I have to get to this grievance before we get out of here, James, because I gave people an update. I told you the story this week that for the Alabama game, the LSU-Alabama game.
Oh, yeah. You teased it. You're got to pay off the tease. Here we go.
The governor of Louisiana has demanded that a tradition that has been gone for 8 years at LSU be restored. And he wants a live tiger in like a circus cage in the stadium in Death Valley, 100,000 fans screaming, going crazy, right? And this is the governor who demanded this, okay? The university, as I explained the other day, was just like, we don't really want to do that anymore. We've realized that it can be pretty stressful for the animal, and it's really loud and it's crazy, and we do kind of mean things to make it roar, to get the crowd to roar back, and so let's just not do that, okay? We have a live mascot. His name is Mike the Tiger, and he is in a state-of-the-art 15,000 square foot exhibit across the street from the stadium, and we want to leave him there. And the governor was just like, well, I want a tiger in there, so let's make it happen. So he forced this thing through. and they have secured a tiger for the game, James. All
Okay.
right? The tiger's name is Omar Bradley, which is a phenomenal thing to name a tiger. All right? And this is the wild thing about it. The guy who is bringing the tiger, we speculated, is it like a Doc Antle or a Doc Antle type character?
Yeah.
His name is Mitchell Kalmanson, and he has been he's been investigated and cited multiple times for failing to meet minimum federal standards for the care of animals used in an exhibition. And here's the best part, okay? On 2 separate occasions, he has had tigers escape.
Oh, no.
That's the guy. My grievance is not even with this dude because somebody's paying him to do this.
Yes.
My grievance is certainly not with Omar Bradley, the tiger.
Yeah.
My grievance is with the governor of Louisiana being like, I'll tell you what, I have an idea and it's going to go through no matter what. And just forcing this thing in like the petulant manner of a Willy Wonka rich kid and just being like, no, we're getting a tiger in there. Sir, the only person willing to give us a tiger is a guy who has had tigers escape. We think this is a really bad idea. I want a tiger, damn it. Get me a tiger. That's what's going on with this governor. I assume that he wears white suits and has a pocket watch and a white mustache with a curl and probably has a cane with some fancy gem at the top of it. Like, this man is a caricature.
Maybe a tiger head gem on top of his cane.
So my grievance is, like, just let the sleeping dog lie here. Let the sleeping tiger lie. If you know that, like, hey, wouldn't that be fun to get a live tiger back in there? And cooler heads and more wisdom prevailed and said, actually a little bit complicated, not the best thing for the animal, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and by the way, the guy that we can get potentially endangers the lives of people on the field because he doesn't keep the tigers captive.
Yeah, that's not the move. Not the move.
Anyway, grievance aired with the governor of Louisiana. I don't try to be political on the show, but that one, get this guy out of here.
Yeah, let's get someone else in there if he's going to do this. Yeah, that's you speculated it'd be a Tiger King type roadside zoo guy, and it is, and it's the worst kind.
It's the worst kind.
I was thinking you were going to say he was auditioning to be on Tiger King season 3 or something like that, but this is way worse. Yeah,
this guy's an idiot. So
idiot.
There it is. There's your grievances. 877-353-0700. That's how you can air your own grievances. You could always call us as well. We'll wrap up the show next. Is Spence Checketts on remote again today?
He is. It'll tell you where in the next segment here. I gotta look it up. With the tease.
Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. All right, the drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next. He'll be at Smith's on 9th and 9th. Trivia question today for a Lemon Shark Poke gift card, 877-353-0700. If you can tell me the last year that BYU won the rivalry game at Rice-Eccles Stadium. 877-353-0700. Lemon Shark Poke on us if you have the answer to that question.
And that game is only famous because it's the last time BYU won, right? There's no other reason why.
No other reason.
No other reason.
There's no other reason why that would be interesting to people. James, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, my grandpa passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
I know. Sorry to
you
bring
really
the show down a little
You
bit.
play things close to the vest.
I did.
You don't tell us about this.
I know. I did.
I'm sorry about that. We could be supportive.
I know.
Okay.
I'm not great at sharing stuff.
That's fine. If it's better for you to not share, I understand that. But I want you to feel like it's safe with your coworkers to share things that are meaningful in your personal life.
I appreciate that. And how it does relate to the Holy War because he was a huge BYU fan.
Okay.
BYU season ticket holder, even when he retired to St. George 10 years ago, and he still, even with all those 8 o'clock games in the Independence era, he still drove up from St. George and drove back the same night.
Oh.
So, like, that kind of dedication, and a lot of my uncles, obviously his kids, aunts and uncles, obviously his kids were speculating that, hey, the reason why BYU's having this miracle season and Utah is having the opposite, especially in October, is a little God wink for him. That's like, hey, you're getting close to the end. Let me give you something you'll love here.
You're gonna love this, okay? When you finally go out, BYU's going to be an undefeated football team.
Yeah.
So
right. They say they're all. That's one of the ways that they're talking about it. My aunts and uncles are talking about it. And us and the family are talking about it. It's like this season's for my grandpa. So I'm not really rooting for either. I'm kind of Dan Patrick style, rooting for the best story, and maybe Utah winning in an upset's the best story. But I feel like either way, it's a great story for me because my grandpa really did love BYU, and this is kind of a dream season for him.
Look, it's impossible to hate on something like that, Jim.
No.
It just is because, like, I have a deep affection for the old. I think old people, like, you've earned it. You get to just kind of live your life the way you want to at the end. And I look, my grandma, I have one grandma left, and her thing, like the thing that she gets the most enjoyment in life out of now is watching football and
That's
watching
awesome.
and she's a big Niners fan. She's the reason I'm a Niners fan. And when I call my grandma to talk about Niners games and the Niners are not having a great season, it's hilarious how bothered she is by that, right? So, like, I need the 49ers to do for my grandma what BYU did for your grandpa. So
yeah. Maybe the
you.
rest of this season. Maybe this is the Super Bowl year.
Yeah, maybe.
For the
hopefully.
Niners for your grandma.
Cross the fingers, hopefully. I actually wanted to take my grandma to the 49ers Super Bowl in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that would be so cool. She's getting older now. I'll take her to the Super Bowl. And then I was like, oh, I can't even afford to take myself to the Super Bowl. Never mind.
It was a good thought. It was a good thought.
I was like, that. I don't have a good concept of the amount people are dropping to go to one Super Bowl. Anyway.
Yeah, well, one other thing, funny thing about with my grandpa. So we had his funeral recently, obviously with him dying so recently, and they put my aunts and uncles put the BYU schedule on the back of the program.
It's amazing.
They were like, "What are we gonna do? What are we gonna put on the back?" And someone was like, "Put the BYU schedule on the back," and it has all the results so far this season and a bunch of green W's.
I hope
it was
you
amazing.
kept one, and I hope you framed that. That is a power move. That's really great. That's phenomenal. All right, everybody, enjoy your weekend. Look, be loud, be passionate, be crazy about your team at the rivalry game. Be good to everyone else involved in the rivalry game. And if you see me up there, I'm going to be up there on the sidelines, I think, on Saturday night. If you see me, say hello, because if Utah loses, you're not showing up again, all right? Let's just be realistic about it. So let's all say hi to each other on Saturday night at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. He's at Smith's on 9th and 9th. That's all for the Sean O'Connell Show this week. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.